anybody's going to be looking for an opportunity to speak either in the open section or specific item tonight, make sure you fill out the in the overflow rooms. There's at least one village employee, and the forms are in those rooms as well. Meeting to order with a roll call.
President Demos.
Here.
Trustee Clark.
Here.
Trustee Kenwood.
Here.
Trustee Ladisak.
Here.
Trustee McGinley. Here. Trustee O'Shea.
Here.
Trustee Senate.
Here. If Trustee Kenwood could lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item is audience participation. The first item on this is a proclamation in recognition of the dedication of Merrill Rajek for his contributions to the Glen Ellyn Police Pension Fund, the Glen Ellyn Volunteer Fire Company, and the community. Catherine, if you could please read the proclamation into the record.
Whereas Merrill Rajek has been a longtime resident of Glen Ellyn, and whereas Merrill Rajek was a trustee for the Glen Ellyn Police Pension Fund from 1983 to 1993. Whereas serving as a trustee on the Glen Ellyn Police Pension Fund required many hours of reading, researching, studying, and attending meetings. And whereas Merrill subsequently served as an investment manager for the Glen Ellyn Police Pension Fund from 1993 to 2017. And whereas Merrill has served the Glen Ellyn Police Pension Fund of the Village of Glen Ellyn and also currently serves as an investment advisor to the Glen Ellyn Volunteer Fire Company with dedication and commitment to a high standard of public service, which has earned him the respect and admiration of those who have worked with him. Now therefore, I, Alexander W. Demos, President of the Village of Glen Ellyn, Illinois, do convey the appreciation of the Village Board and the residents of Glen Ellyn for the dedication of Merrill Rajek for his contributions to our community.
If Mr. Rajek can please step forward and accept the proclamation. Thank you for your service. Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
The next is a proclamation in recognition of Arbor Day 2017. Clerk Galvin, if you could please read the proclamation into the record.
Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nevada Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees, and this holiday, called Arbor Day, is now observed throughout the United States and the world. And whereas the Village of Glen Ellyn has been recognized as a Tree City USA for more than 30 consecutive years and desires to continue its tree planting traditions, and whereas it is generally recognized that the abundance of trees within Glen Ellyn contributes greatly to the visual beauty of our village, Now therefore, I, Alexander W. Demos, President of the Village of Glen Ellen, Illinois, do hereby proclaim Friday, 28/2017 as Arbor Day in the Village of Glen Ellen and urge all citizens to plant trees to gladden the hearts and promote the well-being of present and future generations.
Thank you. Public Works Director Hanson can accept the proclamation on behalf of the village. The next is the proclamation and recognition of our Sister City Week 2017.
Ready?
Ready?
Whereas the Village of Glen Ellen and the City of Lake Fosco, France have become sister cities to celebrate one another in their common virtues and aspirations. Whereas the two municipalities wish to share our history, friendship, appreciation of the arts and culture, along with the features and benefits of living in such interesting and dynamic communities. Whereas our two cities commit to promoting human, cultural, sporting, educational, and economic relationships, respecting each other's characteristics in an atmosphere of trust and solidarity, bringing together citizens of all social and generational backgrounds, celebrating cultural awareness in both cities, and supporting personal and community initiatives of our citizens. Whereas the Village of Glen Ellen Sister City Community is hosting the 3rd annual Market Francais community event on Wednesday, April 26, 2017 at the Glen Ellen Civic Center. Whereas this annual French-themed special event seeks to celebrate the village's sister city partnership with Les Bousquet. Now therefore, I, Alexander W. Demos, President of the Village of Glen Ellen, Illinois, do hereby proclaim the week of April 23rd to April 29, 2017 as Sister City Week in the Village of Glen Ellen, thereby recognizing and enshrining the various and divergent community interests of our citizens by building a better climate for world understanding.
Thank you. Al, who works very hard on our Sister City Committee. Thank you very much. If everybody, I just want to say on behalf of our sister city, I had the great pleasure while I was on a trip to Europe actually visiting La Bousquet. And it was a wonderful environment. People were very friendly. They're looking forward to visitors from the community. If anyone has the opportunity and finds themselves in Europe, it's just outside of Bordeaux. It's actually part of Bordeaux. They've been eager and willing and energetic, and they participate in every capacity that they can. Even looking forward to developing an exchange group between the village and that city. I would, do your research, take the time. Please come to the French Market. I think it makes a statement to them that we're involved and we're taking this relationship seriously. So, thank you. The next is open. This is a point that if anyone would like to speak about any item that is not on tonight's agenda, we've got a great deal of people that are going to speak tonight, so we're going to adhere directly to the 3-minute limitation. Catherine, do we have anybody signed up?
We have 2 people signed up, and our first is Pastor Kirsten Larson from First United Methodist.
I've been invited to offer a prayer, so I invite you to pray with me. We give thanks for the blessings of this community as we share our common dream. Homes and schools where children thrive, neighborhoods that are safe and clean, a village rich in colors and cultures, an economy where no one is expendable, churches, mosques, synagogues, and temples, where our deepest hope is to be of service to a hurting world. May this night's work reflect that which is best within ourselves. And as we leave this place, enable us to carry forth this prayer into the coming week. turning our thoughts toward charity, our hearts toward justice, and our hands toward the work of peace. So be it. Amen.
Our second speaker, or a guest, is Erica Nelson.
Good evening. Good evening, village trustees, Mr. Franz, and village staff members. I'm Erica Nelson. I live on K Road in Wheaton, Illinois. I'm a District 41 Board of Education and community member, and tonight I'm speaking as an involved community member and not as a representative of my board or other organizations that I might be a part of. As a community volunteer, I want to focus my time tonight on an opportunity that is often raised and discussed: the expectation that elected and volunteer leaders should meet to dialogue with their fellow leaders about the activities and plans that set their short and long-term futures. Every municipal group has some specific and shared stakeholders. There is an opportunity to bring groups to the table and create ways to communicate these goals so that those combined stakeholders see the efforts to share ideas and, where they can, to partner for the mutual benefit of the community. In the April 12th edition of the Daily Herald, an article about returning oversight for the College of DuPage to the village of Glen Ellen highlighted that, quote, conversations between the two started several months ago. That model, conversations, should be the norm and not the exception, and I was really pleased to read the article. This is a community that prides itself on remarkable outreach activities that depend in large part on the collaboration of volunteers, government, and not-for-profit organizations. In my volunteer work with the PTA as co-chair for community outreach, I have seen needs rise for our families, along with an equal level of interest to support them from our schools and local community partners and our village government. That work began because of a conversation with a longtime Lincoln School parent volunteer many years ago who envisioned an opportunity for all schools to collaborate and meet the needs of more children and families, which continue today. Over the past several months, there have been many divergent opinions in our community on many issues, at times supported by information that was not completely accurate. An opportunity now again presents itself with even greater urgency for creating a new norm for local leaders that starts with the conversation. In our own careers and professional organizations, our leaders expect their people to work together to talk. I have discussed this with some leaders in Glen Ellen and reaching out to you tonight to be a partner in this effort. I congratulate the village for their work with the College of DuPage. Village President Mr. Demos made a great comment in the article that I referred to earlier. He said, "This goes to show good people with good intentions can accomplish anything," which I completely agree with, and see a great opportunity to accomplish more together for this community. I will do everything I can to continue this dialogue, and I thank you tonight for listening, and I welcome you as partners. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. Is there no one else signed up, Catherine?
No.
Thank you. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Consent agenda as published. You'll find it on the chairs typed out in front of you. It's also on the overhead. Would any trustees like to remove any item from consent agenda for individual consideration? Would any trustees like to ask any questions specifically about any item on tonight's consent agenda?
Just one on number 4.
Number 4?
Yeah. I just want to thank Trustee Clark for his term as village president pro tem. Thank you very much.
He had to drag me kicking and screaming from the job.
Thank you, sir.
We haven't voted on this yet, John. So.
Motion.
Did you have any questions on any item?
I did not have any time for the meeting.
Okay, wonderful. Are there any public comments on the consent agenda? May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda, please?
Mr. President, I bring forth a motion to approve the items 1 through 8 of the consent agenda, including payroll and vouchers totaling $4,582,202.09.
Second.
Second. Any further deliberations? May I have a roll call, please?
Trustee O'Shea.
Yes.
Trustee Kenwood.
Yes.
Trustee Clark.
Yes.
Trustee Lattisak.
Yes.
Trustee McGinley.
Aye.
Trustee Sonic.
Aye.
Wonderful. Consent agenda carries. The next item is item F, proposed development at 825 North Main Street. The presentation will be presented by Planning and Development Director Holzberg. We have a lot of interest and a lot of people here to participate in this tonight. I want to give you an outline, sort of an outline of how we're gonna carry on. We're going to have the presentation by staff. We're then going to open up presentation to the petitioners, in which case then the trustees will have a brief conversation. We're going to open it up to public comment. We're going to allow each person that has signed up, and I would encourage anybody to sign up that hasn't signed up. We're going to, again, I'm going to ask you to conclude within your 3 minutes. I'd like to not be put in a position where I ask you to step down. You know, we're all neighbors and friends. We're trying to find a solution, and this is the process in Glen Ellen that we go through to find solutions. We have made a commitment, and I give you my personal commitment. We're listening to what you say. We want to be respectful to all parties, staff, petitioner, each other, as we move forward tonight, and we'll try to move forward listening to each other with open minds here, and listen to the presentation and try to formulate a decision and through deliberations at the end. So Stacy, if you could, and if the trustees, if you have a specific question during the presentation, please feel free to ask the question. Although if we're going to get into details, I'd like the details to be during the deliberation process. Thank you.
Thank you, President Demos. I'm going to do kind of a brief overview outlining where we've been and the things that have transpired over the last few months and number of years as we've gotten to this point. And as you mentioned, feel free to stop me with any questions. I think everybody is familiar with the location of the property. It's at the southeast corner of Main Street and St. Charles Road. It is zoned community commercial. The remaining 3 corners of the intersection are all non-residential uses. Actually, the 2 parcels at the northeast and the northwest corner are commercially used. The site itself is 1.34 acres in size. The site is currently vacant. It's been vacant for a number of years now, and in its past most recent lives, it really has occupied 3 gas stations. The intersection itself, both on St. Charles Road and Main Street, accepts approximately 37,000 vehicles per day. This is a aerial photograph of the site back from 2008. And it shows that one of the former gas stations occupied the 2 westerly lots and had 4 access points, 2 on each street. So the turning movements that are being proposed with the True North gas station, they are going to, instead of having 4 access points, they're going to have 2 access points, 1 on Main Street and 1 on St. Charles Road, and they will have turning movement restrictions. No left out turns will be permitted on St. Charles Road, and no left in turning movements will be permitted on Main Street. So it is a better situation than the prior 3 gas stations that were previously on the site. This is a picture of the property when the village purchased it in 2010. The village did take the initiative to purchase this property. It had been vacant for a number of years, and it was located at the north gateway to the village, and the village was interested in selling the property, cleaning it up the appearance, dealing with the environmental issues, and then reselling it for commercial purposes. This is an excerpt of the 2001 comprehensive plan. Now, you all know, I think the comprehensive plan is a vision for the future. It sets forward what we would like to see happen in the village of Glen Ellen. And therefore, it's intended to have general statements about development in the village, future possibilities in the village. So I think you can find things both for and against any type of development in a comprehensive plan, and I think that's very typical. However, when you're really looking for what a comprehensive plan says about a specific site, you would look toward the redevelopment section of a comprehensive plan and the target area section of the comprehensive plan. And in our comprehensive plan, we have 3 target areas. One of them is Stacy's Corners. And it specifically calls out what should be accomplished on the 3 sites in question. It says that Site D, which is this area here at the southeast corner, should be suitable for convenience, retail, service, or office uses. And it's also referring to this vacant lot that is also under common ownership with the 2 lots to the west. And it states regarding that the vacant parcel should be designated for commercial use, which would allow for expansion of the existing business, meaning the gas station on parcel 3, and create a larger or more attractive site for redevelopment. In keeping with that, this site was previously zoned residential, the easterly lot, and in keeping with the recommendation of the comprehensive plan, which involved significant public input, the village did rezone that property in 2012, which I will mention again on a later slide. The site itself, all 3 parcels, as outlined in red, are zoned C2 residential, C2 commercial. And I think there was some mention early on in the public hearings that there might have been some protected or conservation or forested area. The village has no record of that, and when we went through due diligence prior to purchasing that lot, we found no such easements or conservation areas. This is the zoning history of the property. So parcel A, right immediately on the corner, was zoned local business since at least 1942. It may have been even earlier than that. Parcel B, which is the next one in, was zoned as far back as 1972 community business. And as I mentioned just a minute ago, the 3rd lot to the east was zoned in 2012 to commercial use as recommended and in accordance with the comprehensive plan. I'm just going to hit on the brief history. I think people are familiar with what's happened on the site. We did start negotiating for the purchase of the site back in 2010. We were successful in 2005. In 2010, we were successful in purchasing the property. Shortly thereafter, we hired an architecture firm, PPK Architects, to put together some possible plans on how the village might encourage the redevelopment of this property for a commercial use. So we had PPK put together 8 plans, and we invited all the neighbors within 350 feet. We advertised it widely. People did come and attend and view those plans. We didn't have anybody in strong opposition to those plans that were prepared, and so we used those plans when we went out for a request for proposals to try to get businesses or developers interested in redeveloping the site. So in 2012, we issued that RFP. We received 2 proposals, none of which were feasible. So we reissued it, hoping the economy would get a little bit better, in February 2014, but we received no proposals. So at that point, the village board did enter into a contract with a real estate agent who could market the property for us. And in August of 2015, True North did make an offer, and in 2016, the village did enter into a contract for the construction of a gas station on the property. I just put this slide in there to show that those 8 PPK plans that were presented at that public meeting with input from the surrounding properties that were invited, all of them showed that the property would be clear cut, and they did show a little bit more intensive commercial use by way of parking and larger commercial buildings. In contrast, this is the site plan that's proposed for True North, and what we have here is nearly 8,000 square feet at the south end of the site that's shown hashed in green. That's to remain as existing vegetation. That means untouched. So the developer, if he moves forward and the board approves this, will be required to fence off that area and will not be allowed in that area with the exception of removing dead trees that have been designated for removal. So the construction activity will not alter that environmental area. I did want to mention this project has been before 7 commission meetings, and that does not count the 3 in early 2016, which were pre-application meetings with both the Plan Commission and ARC. So really 10 commission meetings. And and you can kind of see by reading through these, I won't read through them, but special use permits, sign code variations, and zoning variations and exterior appearance were among the things that the commissions were looking at. So what we are looking at this evening is the area of the box that's outlined in red, and what's before the village board this evening is the consideration of 5 variations from the zoning code and the exterior appearance. The village board has previously approved the sign variations and the special use permit, which are not on the agenda for action for the village board this evening. I'm going to quickly run through the 5 variations that the board is considering this evening. One is to eliminate one of the required 16 parking spaces. The petitioner was trying to maintain as much green space on the eastern portion of the property, and rather than extending that pavement, he's requesting the ability to, or they are requesting the ability to eliminate one required parking stall. They could install it, but generally with gas stations, the 12 parking stations or the fueling stations can count as parking stalls, because sometimes when people go into fuel, they also run into the convenience store and leave their car parked at the fueling station. Fence height variation, I think this is actually to the village staff requested this. I think it's to the benefit of the residents, specifically to the east. The zoning code does not allow this entire red fence that that's shown here to be 6 feet tall to be any taller than 4 feet. I think the idea is to create a greater buffer for visibility for that resident to the east and include it rather than at the property line at a higher elevation, so it'll screen greater. So that is a variation that the village staff asked them to seek. Driveway separation distance, there is a requirement in the zoning code that says that driveways must be 200 feet apart on an arterial road. So the center line of the driveway proposed on the True North site on St. Charles Road is about 160 feet from the residential driveway of the property immediately to the east. When a driveway cannot meet this requirement, what happens is the zoning code transfers the jurisdictional authority to the appropriate entity who has control over that street, which in this case is DuPage Department of Transportation. DuPage was consulted, and they are requiring the access point where it's being proposed. They really did want it as far from the intersection, signalized intersection, as possible. Both the developers, transportation expert, the village's traffic expert, DuPage County, and all the staff have looked at this and believe this is an appropriate location for that access point. Curb return radiuses, very engineering issue. You're required to have a 25-foot curb return radius, but because the village is limiting left turn in from Main Street, which is very important from our perspective from a safety purposes, because if we were to allow left-ins from Main Street, traffic would stack through the intersection, and that's an unsafe situation. So in order to construct the appropriate curb alignments and restrict that left-in turning movement, they can't possibly meet the 25-foot radius, and so they're requesting a variation for a 20-foot radius. Another variation is being requested because the sidewalk that the village staff has requested that goes out to Main Street is required to be 6.9 feet away from a property line. This rear property line on this property is very unusual. It has a sharp curve here, a sharp turn. And so the best that the petitioner could do to meet the requirement of the minimum width of the sidewalk was a 5.5 foot setback, and therefore variations required. As we have gone through this process, the petitioner has eliminated 4 of their originally requested variations. They are not exceeding light levels at the access drive on St. Charles Road and Main Street as it was originally proposed. The light poles have been relocated on the site, so they meet all the minimum separation distances. They did eliminate the sign variation to have a red illuminated band, a yellow decal on the canopy, and they added a mansard roof. And they also reduced the size of the logo signs that were exceeding village code. The second thing you're considering this evening is the exterior appearance of the property. A number of issues were raised during the review of the exterior appearance, and in response, True North has remodeled or revised their plans in order to respond to those requests. And I'm just going to hit on a couple of them. There's many more that were in your packet that I won't spend any time on. So the first question was, this initially proposed elevation didn't match the historic character of our Stacy's Corner intersection. And so the petitioner did redesign to add a cupola with an octagonal tower capped with copper and a gable roof. And they also reduced the size of the wall sign. Another issue was the rear of the building. The bottom 4 or 5 feet or so was going to be exposed foundation concrete, and there was a concern about how that would look from the rear. So the petitioner has added brick to cover over that concrete foundation so it would not be exposed to the south. There was a concern about the appearance of the standard and initially proposed canopy that didn't fit with our historic intersection, and they have come back with a mansard roof for the canopy that would match the design of the building. They've wrapped the columns in brick and limestone, and they reduced that shell logo so it didn't go above the top of the mansard roof of the canopy. There was a concern that a proposed board-on-board fence wouldn't adequately block sound. So in response, they replaced that fence with a sound attenuation wall that has 98% sound attenuation. They also eliminated a proposed car wash at staff's suggestion early on in the process and a car vacuum, and they've also agreed to eliminate any outdoor music and gas televisions on the gas pump. There was a concern early on that the initially proposed fencing wasn't sufficient. So what the True North was initially proposing is where this green line is, that 6-foot wood board-on-board fence. And then a 4-foot, where this red is, split rail fence, kind of like you'd see in a horse corral. In talking and hearing from the residents and talking with the petitioner, they have moved that fence, the 6-foot fence, to the higher elevation. Over to the east is lower. This will screen better the situation and the canopy and the activity. And also they replaced that with the sound attenuation wall. We then asked them to add the same sound attenuation wall to the west of the building, which they did. Initially it was going to be proposed south of the building, but that would have caused clearing of some of the existing vegetation, and at the lower elevation, again, wouldn't be screening much of anything. At the most recent Architecture Review Commission meeting, the Architecture Review Commission asked that that sound attenuation fence be extended further west, and they've also agreed to that. One of the other things that they've agreed to that was raised at the Architecture Review Commission meeting was increasing the height of the trash enclosure. Now, I haven't outlined that in a color, but here it's to the northeast corner of the building or the east of the building, and that wall, which will be a brick wall, has been increased from 6 feet to 8 feet at the request of the ARC and the residents.
Stacy, can I stop you there real quick?
Yes, please.
So in our memo, it said that if we were going to support that extension, we had to amend the motion, but because they've agreed to it, that is now part of the project, and we do not need to address that. Is that correct?
Okay, so there's two slightly confusing issues there. The thing that couldn't be increased in height from 6 feet to 8 feet is the fence. The wall, actually, the maximum height is 8 feet. And so it wouldn't have required a variation. You could have required the garbage enclosure to go to 8, not the fence, because that requires a separate variation. But since they've agreed to it, it's a non-issue.
Thank you. Okay.
Let's see, I'll catch up here. So another concern was that the proposed plan removes 37 trees that are 10 inches or greater in diameter. And that is, obviously a concern. Now, keep in mind that the trees that are identified on the site by our code, they're only required to identify the trees that are 10 inches in diameter or greater. So there are a lot of other trees on the site that are not identified here that will be remaining within that buffer area, and that also will be coming down outside of the buffer area. But when we're talking trees, we're talking those existing that are 10 inches in diameter and greater. So in response, we have some colors. The True North has added 5 ornamental trees to the rear of the building. We seem to have quite a few canopy trees, but we wanted to encourage them to add some lower story ornamental that would block, you know, kind of the understory. And so what you see in the orange is the existing trees that are going to be retained that are 10 inches and greater. Keep in mind, there are other trees that are going to be down in this undisturbed area south of the building that are lesser than 10 inches, and they're not shown on the plan. The red ones are those understory trees or ornamental trees that are going to be installed in the back. And you can see where they are elsewhere on the site too. So a total of 42 trees are being added. Yes, 37 are coming down, but 42 are being added, including those 8 ornamental, which are red, the 7 shade trees, which are blue, the 28 evergreen, which are green, and the existing 10 inches and greater trees are 10. So we have a total of 52 trees on the site, which does not include those, as I mentioned, trees that are less than 10 inches in diameter, doesn't include the grasses, the ground covers, the perennials, and the shrubs. So this is just an inventory of the trees.
Stacy, can I just ask a question on that, please?
Sure.
The packet, I'm showing the very southern end of the property line. I'm showing 4 trees that are being taken down that could stay because it's in the green area. Why are those coming down? I only see 2 on yours. I think those are X's, I can't tell. But on my packet, I see 4.
So 1, 2, 3,
Yeah, that
4. My
Are those
guess
dead
is,
trees? Are
my
those-
guess is they're dead. But we can have, when the petitioner time to come
I
up,
assume
we
they
can-
wouldn't take down live trees that far off the property, right? So if they were live, they would stay,
Unless they were ashes.
unless they're ash trees.
Yeah, there's ash trees coming down and dead trees coming down. There was an inventory along with all of the condition of each of those trees on one of the plans, and this is their landscape architect who is going to introduce himself.
Good evening, my name's Randy Metz. I'm a landscape architect with the Eisrad Group. The 4 trees in the southern portion of the site are green ash, which are infected with the emerald ash borer.
Okay, thank you.
And that's the reason they're being taken down.
Thank you very much.
There was some concerns about the elevations. Typically what we see from proposed commercial buildings is just the rear of the building itself, nothing around it, surrounding it, and that's very typical of what I've seen in development proposals over many, many, many years. The residents, and rightly so, wanted to know where is the canopy and how am I going to see it from the rear. So the petitioner has revised the plans to not only include the 8-foot garbage enclosure and the 6-foot attenuation wall and the 4-foot attenuation wall, but to show what it would look like from various views behind the building. Now keep in mind what you're looking at does show the appropriate elevation changes, and it's hard to tell if you don't have good perspective, but it does not include the existing trees and the proposed trees. So I'll try to call out where those are going. So this is from directly behind the building. Again, keep in mind, in this area here, we have about 10 8-foot evergreens. This is a 6-foot fence. Evergreens grow quickly, so those will be above the height of the fence. And again, this garbage enclosure is now 8 feet in height. This is from the southeast corner of the building. Again, you still can't see the canopy from this distance. This building over here, way to the left, is that Kumon dry cleaner building that you can see. And we also have that fence extension that the petitioners agreed to just as of after the ARC meeting. This is where you can see the canopy from the far southeast corner of the site. However, like I said, there will be 10 8-foot evergreens, and this fence is shown at 6 feet in height, and they will grow taller than easily screen the canopy. I am not going to read all these. Above and beyond what the village code requires. True North has tried to be responsive to a lot of the concerns that they've heard at the meetings. And so these are things that they did above and beyond village code requirements. I'm only going to mention the ones that are bold because a lot of the others I've already mentioned in some of the prior slides. And actually, number 4 about wrapping the canopy columns with brick and limestone, I did mention on another slide. The 23 arborvitae evergreens were added for additional screening, specifically at resident request, along the east property line here, buffering this existing single-family home off to the side, at the rear of that fence I was showing you, at the rear of this fence that we were showing, and over here. So those were in specific response to the request of residents. The additional multi-stem clump trees, which are basically ornamental trees, also being provided behind the building. I think I said 6, maybe 5. And this is something that is very unusual. I've only come across this once in my career, but they have agreed to provide the 6 adjacent residential properties with landscaping of their choice to be planted on the residential properties, of course with property owner consent, up to an amount of $750. That does not stop residents from installing their own additional landscaping, but this is more of an effort to help if there's a specific sight line on a residential property that needs some additional screening in addition to what they're proposing, to address that.
Stacy?
Yes.
There was some talk on that, if that's going to be just a check written to the homeowners, or that would be something that would be incorporated in the building plan, and as the landscape architect was doing their work, they would plant that for the residents at that time.
So the way we envision this working is they're going to write a letter to each of the property owners saying, would you like this? And, you know, here's a list of all the trees, because they're not going to pay resident rates at a nursery. They're going to pay, you know, bulk
So
rates.
it's going to be part of the building.
Right, it's going to be part of the building permit. They're going to have to correspond with them, you know, say, what would you like? You need to give us permission to come on your property. We will install it, and then obviously it'll be resident responsibility to maintain it.
And how many properties is that total, you said?
6. Did I say 6? 6.
Thank you.
This is the first time for the village. They've agreed to, and the village staff did suggest, an annual landscape maintenance inspection of the property to ensure that all this landscaping that's shown on this plan actually exists in perpetuity. We have hundreds of commercial sites in the village, and we make sure at the close of, when we offer final occupancy, that all the landscaping that was on the proposed landscape plan is there and alive. But we do not have the staff to go back and check every commercial property every year. We are committing to do that, and the petitioner is willing to accept that and abide by that. This is, I think, a big one, the stormwater detention plan. Right now, the entire site sheet flows to basically the southeast corner of the property and goes down kind of a swale at a lot of the residents that abut their rear yard along Elm. It's been a condition that's existed for many years. The modified engineering plan is basically going to say that it basically shows that 80% or so of the site will drain to storm sewers in St. Charles Road and Main Street, and the only stormwater that's going to end up in the backyards is about 20%, and it's of that natural undisturbed landscape area behind the building. So this will be a great improvement for some of those stormwater issues that the residents have been experiencing in the recent past, and I think they showed some videos. Yes.
If the proposed plan as it exists doesn't solve the stormwater detention issues for the residents whose backyards abut are off of Elm, are there any plans to do anything further to address those concerns?
So in the Planning and Development Department, we have a stormwater engineer, and Public Works staff have other, expert engineers. And usually what happens is certainly what they're proposing goes above and beyond DuPage County requirements. Their initial plan met DuPage County stormwater requirements. This is, I think, an even better proposal. But we constantly send out our engineers to work with residents and give suggestions and ideas on how we can how they can improve those situations, and when it's appropriate, if there's village projects in the area and we can assist with that, we do that all the time.
Their stormwater problem doesn't seem to be the result of what's being proposed by True North. It seems to be, from my observation, the result of the drainage off of Main Street.
Behind the 817 building?
Right.
So-
And so my question is, you know, even assuming that everything goes as planned for True North, I suspect there's still gonna be some stormwater issues there. Do we have any plans to continue the dialogue with the residents to address those?
Absolutely, and I'd make my stormwater engineer completely available. We've been out, lots of staff and commissioners and board members have been out, and we've noticed that, we've recognized it, and we're gonna be evaluating that and seeing if there's any other improvements, which I think there will be, that will be required off-site.
Okay.
Stacy, one question. You position this as something that is above the requirements, but realistically, environmentally, this is the right way to put
It's
that
better.
into the stormwater,
It's
right?
absolutely better.
Okay.
I would agree.
Okay.
Which is one of the reasons we worked with them and their engineers to come up with a better solution, even though, you know, what they were proposing did meet code.
And it's my understanding you use some percentages, but it's my understanding when you talk about the 20%, you're talking about the water that falls naturally on the property that's green behind the building.
Correct.
And then there's a piece of it from the west pump that would flow from the west pump concrete to Main. And all the rest flows
To St. Charles Road.
directly to St. Charles,
Correct.
correct? That's what you mean by the 20%?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So just,
If you don't mind.
I'm not at all,
Thank
sir.
you. I do have a question. I went out to look at the stormwater here, and it seems that there's a break point. The sidewalk is higher, and it is an elevation break from Main Street, but both the 7-Eleven lot and the adjacent lot where the math center and the cleaners are seem to both sheet drain to in between the buildings, and there seems to be one not a typical uniform municipal code storm basin in the back there.
Okay.
I don't know if that's been addressed or that can be looked at, because it seems that the massive amount of flow is the accumulation of the hard surface drainage from the adjacent property and all of the 7-Eleven property. I didn't notice a single basin in either of those two properties, so it seems and there is a curb cut out, and the sewer in the back is obviously not adequate to handle that amount of square footage. Is that something as a village we can look at to address? Because if that curb was reconstructed in an appropriate basin
Correct.
to capture that stormwater issue could be addressed. And I know that's separate and apart from this, but if you were to shoot the elevations there, I'm not sure that we have the elevation. There seems to be a significant break from rise from Main Street to the sidewalk level and
And then a
then
big
down
drop.
again. But the amount of water that flows there naturally from that lot and the acceleration and, you know, as it hits, it makes a bit of a riptide
Yep.
directly to the back corner.
I've seen it after the rain. So, yes. I will, I know my stormwater engineer has been out there to look at the site and is aware of the issues, and we will absolutely be addressing that, especially, it'll make it easier. I think there's been some modifications back there that were not permitted, so we will.
Right, and we need to look into that, and that could be something, as a village with our typical stormwater management activities and stuff that we can address. I have one other question while we're on this topic. If the village wanted to participate to this untouched buffer area, if the village wanted to participate in a capacity of planting additional trees there, or if at some point in the future a tree was to die in that capacity or need to be removed because of disease, can the village have the option to invest in increasing plantings in this buffer? What would the agreement need to look like that would allow us a latitude as a village to say we want to work additionally and facilitate that area with some improvements? Is that an option? Is that something that would be an agreement between the two?
Now, I'm not going to speak for the petitioner, but the village contributing
can
trees
address
to
that
their
during the-
property, it would absolutely require their permission for us to go onto
Because
their
if we're
property.
taking the standoff approach to the buffer area, that we want you to leave it alone, and we view as a village that some additional improvements in that area may be beneficial at some point in the future if we want to plant additional evergreens in the removal blue spruces, things. I'd like to at least discuss, because we're exonerating the liability in that area by saying don't touch it, well, can there be an agreement in the future at our expense that if we would like to add to any of the buffer areas, I'd like that to be a consideration as we discuss
I think we
this
can,
project.
we can easily craft some language that would be appropriate for both parties if they're acceptable to it. Typically, it would be in the form of a development agreement, but perhaps Attorney Matthews could come up with something a little simpler.
Well, as we work very diligently to reforest the village in different programs, if that's an option, or if there's an option in a discussion or deliberation that we want to consider that, I'd like to understand what the vehicle that would allow that to be a consideration. Thank you. Tim, you had a
Yeah, Stacy, just can you go back to the drawing with the fences, please?
That one?
So I just want to be absolutely clear. If I drew a line from the blue fence on the left, came down to the red fence, came down around the building, all the way down to the back, over, up, everything from that point to the north, and to the west drains out of that area. Is that correct? So even the gutters for the building are going to be routed to the
Everything.
north?
Yep, everything.
So it's just rain that
Including-
falls in that green area is truly, that's all
Yeah,
that can go in.
including what lands in the detention basin is also going north.
So nothing will
Nothing.
come back there.
It's
So even if there's a
just-
spill, that
That goes
there's no
north.
chance.
That it's gonna
Our
end up in their
engineer-
backyards.
Their engineer has proven that that will go out to St. Charles or out to Main Street.
Correct. So if there is, let's say, some spillage on the surface, and they have, and you can ask them to, respond to this, but there's kind of an oil separator catch basin that they'll need to maintain, and they have, standards to do that. And that water will go into the detention basin, which goes north to St. Charles Road.
So there's no out of that basin to the
No.
south. Okay, thank you. What about overflow? If that were to overflow,
Well,
overtop.
that's a different
what
question.
we all know about Lake Ellen. If that were to
So-
overtop, where does that go?
I'm gonna let the engineer talk about that.
We can wait till they do it. I can ask you when you do it.
Okay.
So I'll hold
Okay.
that question. Thank you.
Can you just briefly circle the area in the plan that is going to drain to Main Street?
So there's a little corner here, kind of in this area. So that.
And is that going to drain to Main Street by
It's-
surface, or? is
No,
it
it's
drain
gonna go
Main Street by
underground
basin?
to our storm sewer.
So it's going to go into the storm sewer, which is pitched to go back down
Yep.
St. Charles.
Can you just show where the storm sewer is?
Oh, I don't know where it is on Main Street. Do we have a Mr.
I mean,
Minix or a Rich?
I'll assume it's south of the,
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly where the underground. Okay. I am almost done. So there was the suggestion to make, where the detention pond was only about 4 feet or so from the east property line, and they were proposing a bunch of arborvitaes there, and the idea was we want to make sure that those arborvitaes have a good chance to survive. So they actually made the detention pond a little bit deeper and moved it 4 foot to the west. They also agreed to reduce canopy lighting between 12 and 5 a.m. and have that automatically programmed so it automatically turned down. They agreed not to have any sound amplification from the speakers. Now, you know that the only time the sound amplification generally comes out of a speaker is if you push the button and you say, "It ate my credit card," or, the pump didn't turn on, or I'm handicapped and I need some assistance. So they've agreed not to use those speakers between 12 and 5 except for an emergency situation. And the last one I wanted to call to your attention was, we did ask them to lower the height of the canopy. They had not lowered canopies previously to anything below 15 feet, and they take a look at this site and did reduce the height by another foot,
Is that the top or the bottom of the canopy?
the bottom of the canopy to the ground. Please jump in if I say something incorrect.
what's the size of an 18-wheeler if it comes in there? I mean, is that underneath?
So this
the-
is not, this type of, they will have diesel, but it's, the flow rate, from what I understand, would take hours and hours. So these, tanker trucks are gonna be on up on North Avenue or down on Roosevelt Road. This is really just to serve, smaller
No, I
vehicles.
I
that
get
have
that,
diesel.
but let's say somebody does want to spend hours filling their tank and they pull in, is that a risk to the canopy, or?
Oh,
I don't know how tall the trucks are.
Typically, the 18-wheeler, the maximum height of the 18-wheeler is 13.5 feet.
Okay, all right. So it should clear that.
That was Mark Lydon, the head of the company.
Okay.
Let's see. So I do want to I'm going to read through the conditions just so everybody in the audience understands what the petitioner has agreed to above and beyond all the changes that they've made. And I'll just summarize, but no televisions can be placed on any gas pump or any location. If they do have to have a screen, you know, the screen where you have to pick credit or debit, or do you want a car wash? I mean, that needs to be allowed. But certainly no advertising televisions. No sound, as I mentioned, from the pump speakers between 12 and 5, except for emergency purposes. Diesel fuel, only at basically the farthest pump west, closest to Main Street. No automotive vacuums on the site. They're going to have one air pump, but you know, current air pumps are very quiet now. It doesn't have those compressors. And that'll be west of the building, away from the residences. No speakers, no music, no advertising on the site. Illumination levels will go down, again, from 12 to 5. And if it does fail, they've got to repair it in a very short period of time. The annual landscaping inspection I mentioned. And this number 9 refers to the $750 of off-site planting on the residential lots. Related to the high-impact pedestrian crossings. So the Plan Commission at their most recent meeting were suggesting high-impact pedestrian crossings. Those are the crossings where you get the really bright lime, new color that is being used for safety purposes and the pedestrian signs. DuPage County DOT obviously has jurisdiction of the right-of-way. They are moving forward with a resurfacing project in this area, we believe later this summer, and we have asked them to incorporate that into their plans if they think it's appropriate. So that's what the staff recommendation is on that one that was raised by the Plan Commission. And then there's these last two. So the prior 10, the petitioner has agreed to above and beyond all of those other things, changes that they've made to the plan. Oh, I'm sorry, this 11 and 12 are things that the petitioner has agreed to. This is related to extending the fence west of the building over to the Kumon building and increasing the height of the trash enclosure from 6 feet to 8 feet. So that leaves 2 conditions that were suggested by the Plan Commission. And they're not specific conditions. What they were is asking the petitioner to review and reconsider the 24/7 hour of operation and review and consider allowing left turn out movements onto Main Street. Obviously, if you'd like to discuss those, I think petitioner will plan on addressing those issues. We have our traffic consultant here. I'm here. Chief Norton is somewhere here, and we can certainly address those things. But if the village board wishes to impose any of these conditions, we will need to reword these for the ordinance, because the way they're currently written, they're not binding in any way. So for this evening, the board is being asked to look at the exterior appearance of the site and the 5 variations. As I mentioned, the special use permit was previously granted, and the variations from the sign code were previously granted, and I can answer any questions.
Could, I'd like to ask the representative of the petitioner to step up to talk about the 24-hour operation at this point, please.
Sure. I believe they have a full presentation as well. So.
Would you rather do your presentation first and then entertain individual questions?
I do address it in the presentation, but I'd be happy to answer.
Why don't you, we'll wait then and finish. I want to talk about, one of the things that I'm a bit uncomfortable with is the 24-hour operation, so I do want to address it individually. As a matter of fact, I think after your presentation, I'm going to ask to deliberate on that specific topic even prior to, because I think it's one of the most energizing topics here that I've heard the most concerned about. So that's something that we're going to deliberate individually, just to discuss prior to, so I want to amend what I had said earlier, because after we finish this presentation, we may as a board discuss the aspect of 24-hour operation and then go into public comment, because some of the things that we talk about might be relevant to your discussion, and you might want to incorporate that into your discussion. And that'll give you a better idea, which will put, you'll hear a bit of a perspective from your board and the feelings on that. So if you want to get into your presentation, I appreciate it.
Sure, and I'm going to try to, Stacy did a great job of giving a comprehensive view, so I had many of the same statements prepared, and I'll do my best to amend those so you don't have to hear those same comments again, but forgive me if I am repetitive on a few, because I'll be adjusting on the fly.
And we want to hear from you, so feel comfortable to present in any capacity or through your presentation. That's fine.
Thank you, appreciate it. So, good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to address the village board, staff, and certainly the residents of Glen Ellen this evening. My name is Ryan Howard. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for True North. Tonight in attendance, a few representatives from our company. First, third-generation owner, Mark Leiden is the president of our company. Fourth-generation owners, Bailey Leiden, who is the Vice President of Operations, and Lindsay Leiden, who is the Vice President of Development. Also, we have with us this evening our General Manager of Environmental, David Nye, and he'd be happy to address any environmental questions that you might have. In addition, we also have the full staff that we've applied from that we've employed from outside of our company, including design, engineering, landscaping, and traffic consultants. So with that, I'll skip further introduction of who our company is, because I was able to do that at the last village board meeting that we attended, and we'll jump right into the heart of the matter. So, as Stacy said, we submitted the offer for the property about 1 year and 8 months ago. We've been working through the process for the last 15 months. We worked with the staff, the commissions, the residents, revising and certainly improving this project numerous times in an attempt to better integrate into the surrounding community and trying to be mindful of the neighboring properties. A few highlights and or aspects that we've adopted to integrate better into the overall project. Number one, we initially proposed a car wash, and a property of this size, certainly most of our competitors and even the Circle K here in town, which is about 30% smaller than the property that we're proposing, does have a car wash. But we understood how the neighborhood aspect of this didn't lend itself to that use. So we removed that request for the car wash. We compromised on access, opting for both restricted access on both streets so we could ensure efficient flow and surrounding traffic on the roadways. We also balanced safety with the Glen Ellen ordinances relative to the driveway locations, as Stacy mentioned. Next, we agreed to the sound attenuation wall most recently. This was suggested by Joe Abel, a resident of Glen Ellen, and supported by many of those who actually opposed the development. This was one of only numerous improvement recommendations made by Mr. Abel, which we incorporated into the project. Stacy mentioned we agreed to 7 conditions, which are all acceptable to the Planning Commission, when unanimously recommending our needed variations. And I won't go through those because Stacy already did. We also agreed to 2 conditions that were accepted by the Architectural Review Commission when they unanimously recommended our exterior appearance submittal. And those have already been discussed as well. The Architectural Review Commission requested 2 additional considerations, both which Stacy did say, but we are willing to accept extending the fencing here, and also extending making the trash enclosure walls 8 foot instead of the initially proposed 6 foot to give some additional visual barrier. Next, we successfully petitioned our national fuel supplier to allow us to install a mansard or shingle facing on the canopy instead of the globally recognized image. And so what we really try to do with the mansard is, shingles are obviously on everyone's roof, is make it fit in from that neighborhood perspective as much as we possibly could. This was one that was not welcomed with open arms over at the big behemoth Shell, and their globally recognized image is very important in a market like Chicagoland. But we were able to work with them and impressed upon them how important this project was to us, and they ultimately did allow us to deviate from that the global standard. We also added some brick and limestone to accent the building as opposed to the standard steel canopy poles. We strategically located the groundwater detention to provide as a buffer to the neighboring properties. you'll not find many properties that are developed with the amount of buffering that we have here, both from the existing trees that we were able to keep in the rear of the property, as well as the groundwater detention area. And obviously, we try to put those towards the neighborhood side to create a barrier to separate ourselves and our business from those neighbors. We strategically relocated the proposed wall to provide as a sightline barrier. So initially we had the fencing and or what now is the wall at the property lines as you typically would. Well, that's at a lower elevation, so obviously sight lines you'd be see straight over that fence. So we took that to the higher elevations of the property, so as you look up, they would block as much as possible from the neighboring properties. Lastly, we engaged the dry cleaner property owner to the south of the proposed project, trying to purchase or even relocate his uses, included this property and to include this property in our development, as suggested by the village, in order to create a larger, more regularly shaped development site and increase the proposed buffer for the residents to the south. And we tried that at the beginning of the project when we initially made the offer to the village for this project, and here as we've been in the most recent months, we've also went back to him, and he just really does not want to sell. So we'll continue to keep our eye on that, and if that ever came available in the future, we quite possibly would have interest in that. We list some of these just in an effort to demonstrate how much we want to integrate into the community. We wouldn't have offered in excess of now 35 modifications or concessions to our standard development, would not have spent the amount of time, money, or stayed so committed to the project if we did not have such a sincere desire to be part of this community. There are two specific areas of the project I would like to spend a few minutes discussing. The first is access, and I'd like to note our traffic engineer is here this evening and can expand on the topic, but in short, I'd like to point out that a full traffic study was completed independently, and then results were shared jointly by True North's traffic consultant, the village traffic consultant, and the DuPage Department of Transportation. While our traffic study supported and we requested full access on both driveways, we compromised on restricted access on both roads as a result of some of the concerns raised by the village, but cannot agree to right in, right out on Main Street. The immediately adjacent property owner, the neighboring properties 2 doors down, the dry cleaners as well as the 7-Eleven, both have full unrestricted, completely unrestricted access. The request by Planning Commission to revisit the issue was somewhat surprising to us, as there was no expert testimony which led or supported this need. The second is related to hours of operation. True North has taken numerous steps related to ensuring uninvasive nighttime operations at this site, including, for the first time, we've never used automatic dimmers that reduce canopy lighting, but that was a concession that we were willing to do. And again, it has been raised a few times while the Walgreens across the street forgets to turn their lights down. Ours, we're removing human air from it. It would be automatically programmed to reduce during those prohibited times. We installed a sound attenuation wall on the sides of the properties, and which adjoin to residential neighbors. We reduced foot candles at the property lines. We reduced the Kelvin, or how bright the light is, for the entire exterior. We strategically located walls and landscaping to act as barriers. We agreed to some of the different conditions, including no vacuums, and we strategically located the air machine. We agreed to restrictions to no outside televisions, audio, and any music. Also agreed only to use intercoms for emergency purposes. We also agreed not to work through an outside window. We believe as a result of the unprecedented steps, we should be afforded the opportunity to match hours with our competitors, including the 7-Eleven next door, other convenience stores in Glen Ellen, and those in neighboring communities. It has been raised if we are afforded the requested hours, Walgreens will request the same. However, when the Walgreens development was completed, Walgreens did not desire to stay open 24 hours. It greatly concerns us that a direct competitor like 7-Eleven, with far less invested in their facility and overall business would achieve a competitive advantage relative to hours of operation. Finally, while we understand there are a group of people who don't want to see this project approved under any circumstances, we are hopeful the balance of the over 28,000 Glen Ellen residents will be proud of the services we provide, along with the tax revenue we contribute to the village. We have worked tirelessly to satisfy the group of people opposed to this project. It is obvious to us they simply disagree with the approved use and accordingly are using every tactic possible to stop the project, including the threat of lawsuits against the village. In various meetings, after those meetings, in campaigns against the project, and in social media, some in this group have used factually inaccurate statements and rhetoric in an obvious attempt to disparage our brand and our company. We are a reputable company that is approaching our 100-year anniversary, an accomplishment you don't achieve unless you do the right things in the communities you serve, and we understand our corporate responsibilities. As I stated, we have a full team here this evening and would be happy to address any questions you might have.
That's wonderful. Again, and we will discuss it as a board, but the idea of compromise on limited or some modest restrictions, we talk about light dimming from midnight to 5 o'clock. This is something, based on the overwhelming input of the group that's represented here, or the many groups that are represented here. And I know that there's more than one group because I've talked to many people, and there are some differing opinions on compromise. And as we all work together as a family or a village, trying to make what is the best decision, us being the stewards of the community and you defining your business model, I would ask if there is conceivably a compromise here to discuss that, if you would be willing to consider closing 7 days from midnight to 5 a.m. instead of just going into a noise or a sound abatement program. And I'd like to have a bit of an open discussion with you, have some questions, the trustees can ask some questions, and then the trustees will ultimately discuss it. We'll hear from the public, and then we'll look to collectively make a decision. But I'd like to hear your point of view in more detail. Is that a consideration? Would that be a consideration? Is it something that, if we made a decision, that's something that you would think about? I would like to understand what your position at this point would be on that.
Well, sure. So
I'm sure as a business, being successful for 100 years, it's been a consideration. If the board is unfavorable, what modest conditions might be considered, and we're going to discuss this tonight, quite frankly. In the public, I'd just like to hear some of your point of views prior to those deliberations.
Certainly. So I guess first and foremost, we feel like the amount of money that we're putting into this investment, and certainly our ability to get an economic return on that investment, again, to be competitively disadvantaged versus that 7-Eleven, I think that's the one thing that continues to stand out to us. Past that, so we do have locations that are not 24 hours within our system. They're typically smaller locations, legacy locations that have been around for quite some time. The newer things that we're investing this amount of money in, typically we stay open during the evening times, and that's why we have requested to. Also, we have made so many concessions along the way. This is not the this is the one that we've had trouble getting our arms around, and so if I think what we would need to do is take a comprehensive view of what this project will look like after all of the different conditions. If that were one of them, we're on it, and make that hard determination. So I don't know for us that it's just that simple one thing that gets proposed. It's more comprehensive of everything, all-encompassing. I can tell you this, that we have compromised a lot of places along the way. We're dedicated. We would like to make this project work, but at the end of the day, we have to make sure that the risk is in the right place for us.
And I think our intentions are similar. We're looking at it from our perspective. Our community, our residents have invested a great deal in this community, in our homes, and in our ordinances, in our time, in our service, and in every capacity. And in the end, we're looking for what is the common ground for which we'll do business together. So it's our time, soon to deliberate this and make I appreciate your investment. I appreciate your compromises. Your compromises are based on from your initial proposal to where you are now. I've heard some people that have said the initial proposal, and again, we're all business people. We all, in some capacity, have some business, and you start at this point, and through reasonable compromise and working together through our ordinance structure, your ordinance structure, through the special use, we're trying to find it. So I mean no disrespect to your company, and I most certainly appreciate all the compromises that you've made, but the compromises in what's going to be acceptable here, we're looking to consider that. So is there anyone else that wants to ask any questions specifically about that issue or any other issue at this point?
The first one is really not for you, it's for Stacy. I understand there is no ordinance that limits the hours of operation of any business in the village to less than 24/7. Everyone can stay open as long as they like.
The only hour restrictions that I'm aware of are those related to or tied to liquor license regulations. Otherwise, I'm not aware of any.
And the operation at True North would be subject to those same limitations?
Correct.
For selling alcohol.
For selling alcohol.
Not hours.
Right.
Correct.
And then some further questions for Mr. Howard. Do you have any data, and I realize your data is proprietary, so I'm not suggesting that you should share it in this forum, but do you have any data that would show that 24/7 operation is needed to ensure the profitability of the venture? And I ask because my concern is to first try to address the considerations of the residents who would like to see restricted hours. But I also understand that has to be balanced against True North's interest in ensuring the profitability of the site. Because if we so restrict your hours of operation that it's not profitable and you close years from now, that is not going to be in anybody's interest, the village or yours. So I'm looking, as President Demos said, to try to find a way to evaluate your position about 24/7 operation versus the residents' position on restricted hours. And I like data. So I'm looking for something that you might be able to provide in, executive session or otherwise, that would demonstrate to us that you need 24/7 hours of operation to be profitable. And in particular, I'd be looking for something that shows revenue generation by the hour, and particularly the hours of midnight through 5 a.m., as was suggested. And then percentage of revenue generated as gasoline sales versus convenience store sales. Would you have anything that you would be willing to share with us on those 2 points or 3 points?
We do have that data, first and foremost. We do also run the analysis on 24 hours versus not 24 hours. And as I stated earlier, we have some smaller sites that don't make that cut. It's just not profitable to be open. But typically everything that we invest the new money in is profitable over the night time. I don't have the specific numbers, and it's certainly each location would be somewhat different. But we do deem that as being an attribute that would contribute positively to the earnings to justify the investment at this particular location. And furthermore, in addition to economics, though, there's two other reasons that we have asked to stay open. Number one is cleaning. I mean, we actually do a lot of our cleaning and things during that period because obviously it is slower. And one of the things that we are probably most known for is our very clean facilities. The other is security, actually. Sometimes when you close, you would think, well, okay, all the problems go away. No, that actually sometimes creates problems. So
can you elaborate on that a little bit? What security concerns would be heightened by you closing between the hours of noon and 5?
Yeah, so one thing.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
Midnight.
I'm trying again.
One of the things that has happened at some locations, not just gas stations, but others as well that have ATMs, is those become targets during the evening when no one's there, when it's dark. People have stolen cars, they drive them right through the building, and they hook up to the ATM and rip the ATM out of there. Typically, they're not that bold if the lights are on and they know the cameras are running and there's people manned at the site.
You,
Go ahead.
Just
John,
as one
I'm good.
example.
you said that you had stations that weren't open 24/7. Roughly what percentage of your business is not 24/7?
Probably, Mark, 80% is 24/7. Probably 80%, 80 to 20% would be closed.
So 20% are
Yeah.
not. And then you said that the ones that aren't are typically grandfathered or smaller. I didn't get a chance to visit it, but my understanding is the one on 75th Street in Naperville is not 24/7. Is that,
It's 24/7.
it is 24/7?
Yes.
Okay. Well, the website didn't say so when I looked, but okay. Thank you.
And that one's in Planning Commission, and that one's one we're rebuilding as well, and certainly it would be 24/7.
Okay.
Stacy, I want to ask Stacy a quick question here. If we were to deliberate and say that operations Sunday through Thursday had to be closed from midnight to 5 and Friday and Saturday 1 to 5, to have some sort of break in operations, canopy lights off with appropriate night lighting, would that prevent them from doing maintenance on the interior of the building? How would you see that ordinance? Couldn't they continue through their cleaning,
question.
have someone that works through those hours?
As long as they
and
weren't open to the public,
not
we
open to the
allow,
public
it's
and
just
the
like when
lighting
an,
restriction?
right, it's just like when an office building closes down and they're not open, but the cleaning staff comes in after hours.
So if we were to create a condition, we can create a condition specifically for midnight to 5 on say Sunday through Thursday, and
That
1
gas
to
and
5
convenience
Friday and
sales.
Saturday,
Right.
canopy lights down to a night lighting environment, but the facility itself can be
Maintenance, cleaning
occupied,
is,
maintenance, cleaned.
yes, as long as it weren't, if you would say that that it wouldn't be open to the public and sales of the convenience store and the gas station would not be permitted, if you wanted to do that.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Stacy, while you're there, I just want to confirm, we know, we keep saying liquor. Is this just beer and wine?
I don't know.
Is that the liquor license you'll be applying for? Is it spirits included?
Yes. We would accept just beer and wine.
That's what's,
Yeah,
so it's really not a liquor store, it's just selling beer and.
correct.
That's
Glen Ellen
liquor.
writes a specific liquor license to every petitioner. We don't have set liquor licenses, and the reason we do is there isn't one sitting on the shelf waiting for the next person. Every liquor license is a specific consideration, and we've added terms and conditions, restrictions, even additions. There's been some beer and wine licenses that we have allowed up to 3% or a specific percentage that the beer seller, for example, where they could sell an individual spirit, a complimentary spirit under a restricted notation. So that's one of the reasons why we create a liquor license. When someone closes, that liquor license is forever eliminated, and then it comes up for reconsideration, and it's considered and written specifically to that petitioner.
Just
Go ahead.
what criteria do you use to determine whether a station should be open 24/7 or not? What's the analysis you do?
So if we already have an operating store, we can certainly, we use the actual data. If we're forecasting a store, we look at similar type stores,
Was that done in this case?
certainly.
Would you share that with the board under the right set of circumstances?
Certainly.
As well as the other data that I've alluded to?
Certainly.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. President, is this our chance to also talk to Stacy about all the general questions we have before we go to public
Yes.
comment? Or we just focus on his
You
24/7?
should ask your general questions.
Okay.
Are you
So-
still on 24/7 though?
No, go ahead.
I'm sorry. The 7-Eleven, do they sell liquor? Yes, and so are they under the normal liquor restriction from not selling liquor 12 to 5?
Yeah, I'm not sure there's specific regulation, but yes, there's a restriction on it, and that's just beer and wine as well. They don't have hard liquor.
Okay, so they are open 24/7, however, no
They
liquor
can't-
12 to
right.
5. And that would be normal standard
But
procedure.
I don't,
Or thereabouts.
I don't think they can't sell beer and wine at 5 a.m. either, right?
Right.
It's whatever the state
Well-
stipulates.
Right.
I don't know the
But
specific
I just
hours,
meant-
but there's certainly restrictions in place with that license.
At what point would the liquor license, the specifics of the liquor license be discussed, Mark?
That'll be coming back to a future board once they apply and once we do background checks and do the normal procedure. There's two other gas stations that have a liquor license. I would assume that it's going to be similarly confined to those restrictions.
One way or the other,
Can I-
that's not likely to be selling liquor 24 hours, because we don't have any other stores that sell liquor 24 hours.
Sorry, were you gonna ask another question?
Well, I just had it, yeah, just, Stacy, you could stay up there too, just a couple for, so traffic, I'm just curious in terms of your traffic for normal stations. Is this additional traffic, is this a destination, or is this really a drive-by, stop, convenient, get gas, and go on? Are we gonna expect to see additional traffic, people that are specifically going to that site just to get gas or food, or do you notice in other communities that you serve that it's primarily drive-bys?
So, the traffic.
It's actually for the petitioner more than
Oh, I
you,
was gonna
Stacy,
say,
but
okay.
it's- yeah. I have questions for you though too, that's why I don't want you to go too far.
Would you like to join me? Okay. So,
I mean,
will
just a quick answer. I
I'll
don't-
generally give you the quick
It's
answer
general.
is, we try to get in the way of traffic. We don't see ourselves as a destination where we create a lot of traffic. That's why we typically try to go where there already is some significant traffic.
So your traffic study really is based upon really current flows. You don't anticipate a significant increase in the handling of traffic on that location? Okay.
Hi.
Go ahead, please.
Oh,
You
sure.
stepped up. You can say a few words.
Sure. William Woodward, traffic consultant, KLOA. Short answer is yes. A majority of the traffic that would be going to this fuel facility would be coming off the adjacent streets already en route to another destination, home or work.
Okay.
So, can I get a clarification on that? Because no? Okay.
Of course you can, John.
Sorry.
Go ahead, John, please. Good.
I am pro tem. So it's my understanding, so I thought I just heard you say the majority, but it's my understanding on the traffic study that 60% will be cars that come by, and then there is the additional that come in is not from cars that come by, and I think you had by hour the incremental trips that will occur due to the new traffic that comes in.
That's correct.
Okay, so it is it's not most of it. It's 60% of it is drive-by that already exists that they get in the way of, and 40% would be new in and outs.
60 is most.
Majority.
Majority is the right word, I guess.
Majority,
Yes. Okay.
yes.
Thank you for the clarification.
My pleasure.
Overtopping, I could just ask that now. Where does that detention pond run off in an overtopping event? Assuming the sewer is not capable of taking that water out.
My name is Marshall Skibby. I'm a civil engineer with the firm Northwestern Engineering Consultants. We are the civil engineers for the project. The overflow from the detention pond will be directed out through a 10-foot wide section of the block wall that is surrounding the detention pond, and it will be on the north side of the detention pond. So when the detention pond overflows, the overflow will be north into St. Charles Road.
And there'll be a swale there protecting that water from going down the sidewalk towards the residents' homes. I assume something will direct that into the
Right,
street.
the
and
swale
not into-
directs the water to the north across the sidewalk and into the curb and gutter section in St. Charles Road.
Okay, thank you very much. Then I just had a couple of questions more about environmental and safety. Can you just explain your vapor recovery system and in terms of what the American Cancer Society, they give some measurements. I'm not an expert at all on this, but they give some measurements on parts per million, and that's acceptable in terms of benzene fumes. Can you give us just an overview of what you guys are capturing, what's being released, and what the danger of those vapors are in the near 50 feet, 100 feet range of that gas station? And then if you can take it out 300 feet, 500 feet, 1,000 feet, whatever. Because I think there are some recommendations I've read about that say that shouldn't be closer to certain houses and schools based upon a certain number of feet. And I'm just curious, it's not prohibited, there's not a restriction or a law or regulation, but there are some recommendations. So I'm just curious if you could just speak to that very quickly on that topic.
Sure. My name's David Nye. I'm with True North. I'm General Manager Environmental. The vapor recovery at a fuel system site is a closed loop system. There really isn't any vapors that escape to the atmosphere per se. The vents that vent the tanks are pressure vents. They're designed to release vapors to the atmosphere under certain pressure scenarios so that there isn't any damage that's done to the tank. When a car fills up at the diesel or at the gasoline dispenser, they'll fill into the car. All vehicles today are constructed with onboard canisters that are designed to capture vapors as they dispense fuel into their vehicle. At the tank, when the tanker delivers vapors to the underground tank, there's a stage 1 vapor recoverizer that they connect to, that as they put fuel into the tank, the vapors come back into the tanker truck and they go back to the terminal. It's a closed loop system. So there really isn't any vapor that people are smelling or getting exposed to in the ambient air while they're either fueling or walking by the site or anything like that. Benzene, one of the common indicator contaminants in gasoline or chemical compounds, is a carcinogen. Getting into the time-weighted averages and exposure concentrations, I'm really not in tune with, I don't have the NIOSH standards in front of me that are formulated under time-weighted averages of exposure, things like that. But there really isn't any imminent health risk while you're dispensing or walking onto a gasoline convenience store site, or either fueling your tank up at a dispenser.
Would you say it's no different than an idling car in terms of the potential fuel? and the
Absolutely,
vapors?
absolutely. You probably have more exposure to exhaust from an idling car than you do while you're filling up
So
at a
idling
site.
cars around schools or downtown or wherever they are
Mhm.
could be just as dangerous as gas station vapors, is what you're saying? in
Well,
your opinion.
not per se, because you're dealing with, emissions from a vehicle are more carbon dioxide than they are,
Okay. But there is
straight
benzene,
benzene.
there is benzene emitted from car exhaust, is my understanding.
Very, very minor concentrations.
Okay. Anybody else have environmental while we're on it?
Just on the question of the cars, what year did they start to require cars to have the?
1998. They were-
98, okay.
Yes.
So it's been a
Yes,
long
and-
time then.
Yeah, and the, prior to, it was in 2014 when they promulgated the regulation to remove stage 2 vapor recovery. Up until 2014, when you dispense fuel at the dispenser, the vapors were returned back to the tank through a special designated line that went underground back to the tanks. So they were recovered in that manner. And all dispensers were equipped with a vac motor that enhanced the vacuum and the recovery of the vapors.
Okay. When looking at the environmental regulations that I think Trustee O'Shea was referring to, one of them is around tankers and a safe distance of tankers to other types of businesses or properties like a school.
Mhm.
What is the plan in terms of tankers filling up the stations? Do they do that at night as well during the cleaning? Do they do that during the day? Do they do it 5 times a day, once a week? How does that work, that process?
Well, if the tanks get filled, and Mark can probably support me on this, but our sites are fueled as they're needed. So, the supply and demand, it's all based on sales and how often the tanks are, but we try to schedule deliveries around, not so busy hours, later in the evening, early morning time when it's easier ingress and egress out with the tankers. We try to keep it to those schedules if we can as much as possible.
So, do you know anything about an environmental regulation of the distance that a tanker must be away from a school or another type of business?
I'm not aware of any of that, no.
So if we were considering restricting the hours for closing 12 to 5, then that would prevent a tanker from coming in the early morning to fill the tanks?
Well,
Mark, do you want to take this?
Yes, my name is Mark Lyden. I'm the president of the company. The tanker restriction, the location doesn't have to be open for the delivery to be made. I mean, they can wait. And right now, we make about 99% of our own deliveries with our own vehicles, so we're not relying on outside carriers. And those are our employees too. And they respect our property like it's their own. And so that gives us comfort in that because it's our employees that are doing it, not some outside carriers. So that's another reinsurance that we have. But to answer your question, it doesn't have to be open. But we use a monitoring service system in our deliveries, and we're watching those inventory levels in our dispatch office, they're live time, and so we dispatch and make deliveries, as it's needed.
Based on your experience, a location like that, is that once a day, or is that?
It'll probably be pretty close to once a day, maybe, 5 times a week, but
Right, okay.
probably would be at least that.
Thank you.
The only last thing that I'll add relative to the proximity to the school and the tanker is the tanker path, as proposed, would not go by the school. So it would stay to the corner of St. Charles and that area.
Yeah.
Would not
Yeah.
go get done by the school.
Actually, as a question for Stacy, is a tanker wouldn't be able to go south on Main into Glen Ellen, or would they? Is there any restriction on that?
So you don't know that? Or Julius? I don't see it.
There are weight limits on the streets, but it wouldn't pertain to deliveries at a specific address. The same goes for if you were having gravel dumped in your yard. That truck might be overweight on some streets, but because he's making a delivery to a specific address, he can travel the route necessary to get to your address. Okay?
Okay. So is a tanker classified as hazardous material or not?
Oh, yes, of course.
It is. And hazard material can go through the center of our town then?
Yes, it can.
Okay.
If it's properly placarded and has all the safety features it's supposed to have.
Okay.
One more question, Chief. Sorry. To your knowledge, does any tanker for any gas station in the area go through our town right now?
Not to my knowledge. Well, Roosevelt Road is through our town.
Well,
so that
I'm
counts.
sorry, through our central downtown.
Tankers? No, because it's not convenient for them to get around through our central downtown.
They'd have to go around Main and all that, right?
They're big they tend to be big vehicles, and the streets aren't built for that kind of width and length of truck.
Thank you.
All right.
Chief, while you're there.
Yep.
Do we allow left turn out of the Shell station on Park and Roosevelt? Out going southbound on Park Avenue?
Yes.
And do we have many problems with that turn that you know of?
It snarls traffic up pretty good
Snarls
there
traffic,
sometimes.
but any accidents or safety issues?
We have some
besides
accidents there, but anytime you introduce we have accidents at every stop sign in town because you're impeding the flow of traffic. Anytime you have something like that, you're going to have accidents.
Okay. Does that concern you with this?
The-
Any more than, does it
Which
keep you up at night?
does what concern
If
me?
it was a left turn out of the station onto southbound
No,
Park?
because the traffic's going to queue on the
Main.
gas station property.
Mains.
You said Park.
I'm sorry, I'm thinking of the old station. Yeah, Main Street, sorry.
I want to be sure I have the right question. Does allowing left turns off the property onto Main Street concern me?
Yes.
No, I think traffic will queue up in the station lot. I'm more concerned about turns in where it impacts our streets.
So if there was only right turns out, where would the residents have to go to get back into town?
Well, they'd have a couple of options. If they could make the left turn lane, they could go down to a side street, depending on where they're going. They could turn right to Ryford.
So that most likely everyone would avoid the light and go right to Ryford or right to Lennox, I assume?
Well, it's still a light. I mean, you.
No, if you come out and you head just directly eastbound on St. Charles, you can get back in. There's
Oh, you
not
mean
a
if you get out on St. Charles, right?
Yeah, there's no, you can turn right there freely at any one of those cross streets, right?
Chief, would, one of the concerns by the residents is that left turn lane during the middle of the school day where there are now special preschool pickups. I have to make sure I say this correctly. Kindergarten pickup, kindergarten drop-off. Would the police station, police department be open to adding a patrol person there for at least the first couple of weeks if this project goes forward, and then reviewed as needed?
Well, we are doing our best over the last few years to get out of the crossing guard business. We don't have any lunchtime crossings in Glen Ellen anymore at all. Very few kids go home to school by themselves anyways. So what we would do is we would work with the school if they felt it was necessary to have a patrol person there, a crossing guard, if you will, during lunchtime. We would train them, we would equip them, but it would be up to the school to staff that position.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to piggyback on that for a sec. If you're not concerned because the cars will queue up, and if we do go left out of the station onto Main, would you consider a no left on Main during the hours of, let's say, 8 and 9 while kids are being dropped off in school, and 3 and 4 when they're being picked up? Would you view that as a as a safer way to approach the left on Main without restricting it?
I'm not sure the left on Main is going to impact the drop-off or not at this point.
And I'm talking about the kids that are walking specifically.
Yeah, there's not gonna be a lot of kids walking to that school, I don't think.
Okay.
I don't think a lot walk now. Not down Main Street. Well, we used to have a crossing guard at Five Corners that we don't have anymore because of the lack of kids crossing the street.
Okay.
Yeah, she was one of them.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Stacy, I just have two last questions. Was there ever a residential property on the easternmost lot that is part of this commercial property now? That you know of?
So we have
I'm sure
done a
there was
little bit
at
of-
one point, but-
We have done a lot of research on that, looking back at past aerials and past building permits. There was a use on that site that we were unable to determine what it was, but it was something greater than a residential use. It had it could have been a residential structure, but certainly there were storage. It was a very large gravel lot behind the building, wide gravel driveway out to St. Charles Road, and large trucks being stored on the property. So it could have been a home operation business, or it could have been a business.
But nothing in the last 20 years?
Oh, no.
Fine. The last one, for you, Stacy?
Stacy?
The C2 commercial residential, neighborhood commercial, I noticed on the plan commission that you put together, the comprehensive plan. Can you just explain what neighborhood commercial zoning is and what's use?
I have the wording as part of the.
Stacy can answer, thank you.
So, neighborhood commercial is, so we have, C4, which is an office commercial. We have C3, which is more of your corridor, main corridor, Roosevelt Road commercial. And then we have this more community commercial, which is intended to serve neighborhoods. And the way the zoning code would define that is, it's intended to provide basic services and convenience shopping for adjacent neighborhoods as well as the entire community.
I noticed there's a lot of places in the comprehensive plan that mention service. This is a service station. I mean, it doesn't say gas stations. It doesn't say that really anywhere. But I mean, do you, as a planning expert, is service stations, dry cleaners, anything that people go to places for service, in your opinion, as a planner?
Correct. This is not a pure retail. There is a retail component of it, but it's we call it service automotive. So it's servicing automobiles as the primary use.
Okay, thank you.
And Stacy, just on the lot question, can you clarify for me when the property was cleared by the EPA, whatever letter we got that said we're now clear, it sounded like it stated that that lot that was cleared can only be used for commercial moving forward and could never be used for residential. That's the way I understood it. So let me know if I understood that correctly. And then did that imply the two lots next to it also were to be commercial only and could never be residential, or just that one lot that was the gas station before?
It's a very good question. The NFR focused letter that we got from the IEPA does state it's focused. It basically says on the lot itself, which includes all three parcels, you can have commercial. I actually specifically called the IEPA and said, does that mean a gas station? And they said yes, and there were limitations to the elderly, living on the site, residential on the site, and a child daycare facility being on the site. But it really is just limited to commercial uses.
But for all three lots?
Yes.
So we could never make those two lots residential, or would that require a different level of cleanup to make that?
Based on the letter that we have now from the IEPA, we could not.
Okay.
If we wanted to submit some further environmental and do a lot of cleanup work, we could ask for that from the IEPA.
Okay, thank you.
I'm done. Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions?
Two questions to Mr. Howard. Do you have gas stations that are open 24 hours where the fuel dispensing component of that closes and just the convenience store is open throughout the night?
No, we do not.
Okay. And then for your environmental expert, I was doing a little research on carbon emissions. It's been brought up a number of times that this is within 500 foot of an elementary school. I think Mr. Sonic actually did some research on this as well. the only thing the eye could find that defined any type of distance, and again, I realize you pointed out already, the atmospheric conditions vary greatly, you know, whether the air is moist or not, whether it's warm or cold. But as far, the only thing I could really garner was in the California emissions, which are the most strict. They said that they wouldn't recommend that a school be within 90 meters, which is less than 300 feet. Are you familiar with that CARB emission guideline or restriction in California?
Not the California guideline, but I am, it does not surprise me because I did do work in California in the past, and probably under Prop 65 or something like that, where they have that guidance in place for distance.
And do you know if Illinois has one and if it's more or less than that?
Not that I'm aware of, no. The distance that we are from any adjacent secondary school or school more than meets the you know, our requirement for building where we're building.
Okay, thank you.
Pete, is that a recommendation or a requirement in California? Just curious when you read it.
I'm not sure. It just, well, it was the California.
Okay, that's fine.
I think the way I read it, it's a standard. It's not necessarily a requirement, but it is a standard for safety and for environmental safety is the way I understood it.
Mr. Howard, I want to talk about the lights again.
Sir.
You've got a picture up on the screen there of the canopy. What lights are being dimmed? Is it lights around the soffit of the canopy, or lights shining down onto the gas pumps?
So the canopy lights.
Canopy lights?
Yeah, so all the canopy lighting. Yes, the deck lighting as well that shines down, because that's the brightest lighting. The perimeter lighting is not being dimmed because of safety reasons. It's not as bright as that of the canopy anyway.
And we did see some pictures earlier of the project from the southeast and southwest. Very little of the canopy shows from the lots along Elm Street, and I don't know about the one down on St. Charles or not.
Yeah, so there were some
Pardon me.
it's from the back, yeah.
So in that picture there, on the left-hand side of the screen, that is the canopy, that horizontal line. So that would be lit?
The Mansford roof piece up there is the, right? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
The underside of that canopy would have down lighting onto the dispenser pad,
Right,
yes.
but the lighting along the soffit, or is there lighting?
No, there's no lighting around the soffit. So there was an initially proposed,
Because I've seen other stations that have
yeah,
that.
so this does have lighting on it, but when we went to the mansard style, you know, this would be just like other roofs from your home or from other businesses or from our building.
All right, thank you.
Those lights recessed at all into the canopy, or do they?
So they're pretty much flush.
Flush.
Yeah.
What is the highest level of throughput that you're aware of for a True North facility of
Oh.
gasoline? Highest throughput?
Well,
And again, I understand, I mean, tell me if that question you feel
yeah,
is seeking proprietary
I'll say there are
information.
some in the range of 5 million gallons.
From one single facility.
Correct.
Would you tell me how many pumps there are at that facility?
Trying to think if the different facilities that approach 5 million. 8, yeah.
What's the lowest throughput that True North has?
So the lowest throughput that we have, probably 1 million, generally 1 million.
We have 220 independent dealers. If you mean one of those, we probably have, you know, probably in the 750,000 gallon range. But as a True North store, our probably lowest throughput would be probably in the neighborhood of 1,300,000, 1,400,000.
How many pumps are at the one that has 1,300,000, 1,400,000?
Typically, they'll have 5 to 6.
Does the number of pumps affect the volume or the throughput?
Typically does.
this particular station, do you have, without telling me what it is, do you have a reasonable belief that the amount of throughput's gonna be above or below 3.6 million gallons?
I would believe it'd probably be below 3.6 million.
Below?
Mhm.
Okay.
I would like to think it'd be, I mean, it'd be nice it'd be.
What's that?
It would be nice, it would be 3.6.
Well,
but-
you know, we'll save that for another discussion. On the traffic survey that you, that was done, I had some questions about that. It's Mr. Woodward?
Yes.
Okay. On page 6, you talk about the traffic, and let's say this, you didn't author this, did you?
That's correct.
Okay. This was done by Mr. May and is it
Mr. Abuna.
Mr. Abuna. On page 6, you talk about peak period traffic counts.
Yes.
Those peak period traffic counts were done on January 26, 2016, correct?
Correct.
Were those readings taken on any day other than that one day?
No.
The peak periods that you picked, or that were picked, were 7 to 9 and 4 through 6, correct?
Correct.
So that was 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening on one day.
That's correct.
Do you know whether school was in session at that time?
The school, there was school in session that day, I believe, yes.
Okay. How do you know?
We usually check that when the schools are in the vicinity.
Why do you do that?
Because it's come up in public hearings as whether or not it was a normal, quote-unquote, normal day, because we do only go out and do one day of survey.
Do you have concerns that the traffic might have a safety impact on the school? Is that one of the reasons why you would make sure school's in session?
No.
On page 4, you talk about a field visit that was conducted.
Yes.
Understanding that you weren't there. Do you know how long that field visit lasted?
It usually coincides with setting up the cameras when we go out and do the traffic counts. So it could be out there anywhere from, half hour to over an hour. It depends on what we're looking for when we're out there to see how the traffic operations are.
So you would say that your custom and practice is a field visit would last anywhere from 30 minutes to 60 minutes?
Yes. Typically, yeah, unless we're specifically observing something that may take longer.
Right. And there was, as I understand it from reading this, there was one field visit.
That's correct.
Do you know whether Mr. May or Mr. Abuna were present at the field visit?
I do not know the answer to that question.
In here, there's a discussion about trip generation.
Mm-hmm.
And the number of trips is based on the trip generation manual.
That's correct.
Do you consider that to be authoritative?
Yes.
Is that data based on nationwide data?
Yes, it is.
Did you do anything to determine whether the nationwide data is correlated to what happens on the ground at St. Charles Road and Main Street?
Say that again, please.
Did you do anything to determine whether the nationwide data is actually reflective of the intersection of Main and St. Charles Road?
No, we did not.
Can I get a clarifying on that?
Go ahead.
So, the way I interpreted this, though, you did use some of the DuPage classifications of streets to understand the volume on that street?
Yes.
Would you consider that a standard or not?
I mean, we looked at the average daily traffic volumes, if that's what you're talking
That's
about.
what I think they used.
It's just part of our research.
Understood.
Okay.
I'm just trying to figure out whether you actually did anything to kind of determine whether, what the trip generation projections were based on what you saw at Main and St. Charles.
Sure. And it does, in certain cases, we would look at seasonal variations, if it's a retail development, that type of thing, we might look at that. But for a standard fueling center, no, we would not. We did not look at that.
Okay. So that wasn't done for this particular site?
That's correct.
On page 14, you talk about roadway and adjacent or nearby intersection analysis was performed. And then I see table 3, I believe, lists the intersections that that were analyzed.
Yes.
Is that true?
Mm-hmm.
Were these the only intersections?
Yes.
What's the purpose of doing an analysis of the nearby intersections?
It's the intersection that's closest to the development to show the impact that this development might have on that intersection. So we look at the study area, depends, again, because it's, we might, expand out a half a mile radius, or we might just look concentrate right there at the center.
Is one of the purposes of doing this to assess the safety impact on those nearby intersections?
Yes. And how they will operate from a traffic capacity analysis perspective.
Was an analysis done at the intersection of Elm and Main?
No.
You know what's on the corner of Elm and Main?
Yes.
Forest Glen School? Was an analysis done of the safety risk, if any, that would be created for the school by this project?
Was there an
analysis like we're looking at here? Was it done for the corner of Elm and Main?
No.
Did you do anything to assess the safety risk, if any? And I'm not saying there is one, you understand. I'm just trying to figure out
Sure.
if there is one.
Understood.
Do you have any data that would indicate whether there was a safety analysis of the corner of Elm and Main?
No.
Were any measurements made of the foot traffic to and from the school during the peak traffic hours that you referred to?
We did count the pedestrians at the intersection of St. Charles and Main.
But not at Elm and Main?
That's correct.
And any recommendations of whether the foot traffic at the intersection of Elm and Main, and by that I mean the school kids, whether there was a risk that was created to them by the increase in traffic that results from this?
We did not look at the intersection of Elm and Main.
Did you make any recommendations on how the intersection of Elm and Main might be modified to limit the risk to the kids going back and forth to and from the school?
We did not look at the intersection of Elm and Main.
Okay, that's all I have.
I'd like to follow up to that. Would you have captured those children going to Elm and Main in your count when you were looking at the intersection where your project is going in at St. Charles, or Geneva and Main?
If they crossed the intersection at St. Charles and Main.
So those children that use that intersection was captured in your report, and where the cars would actually be entering and exiting?
Not necessarily, no. Because, again, the pedestrians that we counted are the pedestrians that have physically crossed either St. Charles or Main Street.
Right.
So if they, if they went north and then east, it may not necessarily have been counted.
But that would be their normal pattern.
Right. Sure. Yeah. But we wouldn't have counted them if they crossed the theoretical location of the proposed driveway of the access point.
But you would have counted them.
So what I'm saying
in
is
that
that so what I'm saying is that let's say the child left the school, they crossed at Elm, and they were now on the east side of the roadway. They're proceeding north towards St. Charles Road. If they went north on St. Charles Road and then east north on Main Street, excuse me, I'm sorry. They went north on Main Street and then they went east on St. Charles Road. We would not have picked them up in our traffic counts because we would only count those that physically crossed either St. Charles or Main at that signalized intersection.
Okay.
Can I just follow up?
Mm-hmm.
Can we get an order of magnitude of what that was?
Of
me or him?
No, from your traffic study.
Well,
can you share with everyone what those volumes were?
Sure. Just get to the page here. Over a 2-hour period, there were 0 pedestrians counted on the north, south, and east legs of the intersection, and 2 on the west leg. And in the afternoon, or the evening, which was between 4 and 6, again, this is outside, that particularly is outside school hours, there was only 8 people crossing on the west leg.
On the west one?
On the west leg. Correct.
And 0 on the others?
Yes.
So from this, are we to conclude that the number of kids who actually walked to and from Forest Glen would be either somewhere between 0 and 8?
No, because it's not capturing the kids that walked.
I think that's the point, right? This really isn't reflective of what would happen at the corner of Main and Elm, unless we're to believe that only 0 to 8 kids walk to that school.
That's correct, because we do not look at Main and Elm.
Okay.
Well, hold on though, because I just want to make sure I understand this as well. You did not look at Main and Elm because children can be going to Main and Elm from all different directions, correct?
We just not, looking at Main and Elm had nothing to do with the children or the school. We just did not look at that intersection because typically when we look at a fueling center, we look at the immediately adjacent intersection. We did not look at Main and Elm. We were never asked to investigate Main and Elm.
Which I completely understand. So on that particular day, the children that would not, or the pedestrians really, because other people use this, only if you lived on, well, now I'm gonna get my directions screwed up.
East on St. Charles.
Thank you. East on St. Charles. Those are the only pedestrians you would have not have captured walking in that particular area. Because they would not have crossed Geneva, they would have stayed in that direction.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And then, okay. I understand, that makes sense, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have any trustees have any further questions before we move on to discuss this a bit and directly addressing the 24-hour time?
Not at this time.
Do you have a more presentation that you'd like to give at this point?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you. And we can, during deliberations, we can ask more. We can ask more questions. We're going to, I'd like to entertain just some thoughts and discussions on the 24-hour issue, and then we'll get directly to public comment after that. So, does any trustee have anything that you'd like to discuss with the group?
Are you looking for
I'd like
what
to
our
deliberate a
viewpoints
bit
are?
on what your viewpoints or considerations or questions you may want to ask the balance of the trustees, just to discuss. I feel it's appropriate because this is, at least in the concerns to me, this has been the number one concern that I've heard. I'd like to deliberate a bit and see what at least the consensus of thought at this point is on 24-hour operation.
Well, my personal viewpoint is I do support the 24/7 operation because that's your business model. And I don't want to dictate your hours anymore. They want to dictate what you carry on your shelves. You know, while I'm mindful to the residents, there is a 24-hour store at that intersection. And the impact, although it's really hard to quantify what the traffic will be, you know, in the evening and whatnot. One of the least of my concerns would be the safety, because I have a tremendous amount of trust in our police department, and as our police chief stated once before, the safety of any business is typically dictated by the surrounding neighborhood. And being that I know what that surrounding neighborhood is, I grew up on Elm Street. You know, so again, it further reinforces that it is a safe neighborhood. While any element like the recent burglary, when they were closed at the Dairy Queen or the liquor store north of the intersection, anything like a home could be subject to you know, vandalism or burglary or theft as well. But I think that it would be a disservice to our community to lose a prospective petitioner whose business model would dictate that they would need to be open 24 hours, especially if we're looking to, you know, start to slice this apart where you might be closed for 4 hours. At that point, it just doesn't make sense.
What did you want? Were you trying to go?
No, you go.
So walking in here tonight, I was completely supportive of restricting hours 12 to 5. After listening, and I have not listened, I know we have listened to residents so far, but tonight I have not heard the residents yet. But right now I am leaning towards no restrictions, and here's why. Number one, we do not have an ordinance restricting hours, and there is a current business that is closer to these homes that is open 24 hours already. But most importantly, it was the liquor aspect. That's the part I was against. I was against selling liquor in the 12 to 5 range because I think it invites trouble, and being so close to the homes, I really did not want to invite that in. But understanding now that we will have control over that liquor license, and it's still to have to come before the board, but we are even regulated at a higher power, so there's no possible way that we can even allow it. I'm confident that will no longer pose a safety risk. And thirdly, the information about safety actually is better if you have somebody at the store. It's a safer area if you have somebody there who's monitoring the site. You are dimming the lights, you are restricting the noise, you are doing a number of things. What I would like to ask, though, is that if, we still have to go through the entire evening here, and nothing is made up yet, but we add something in, which we do, this is a very common practice, that the future board would commit to reviewing this on a 6-month basis. And just not every 6 months.
Once opened.
Within the first 6 months, pardon?
Once opened.
Once opened, to review it and make sure that we're looking at safety and that it is and that the village is supporting the business and the business is still fitting in with the community as I think it will.
I'm kind of in the same spot with Diane. I came in here against 24/7. I was, when this came up to us in March, I'm not sure if the whole board was there at that meeting. I can't remember if that was previous board or was that just this board? This board. So when we deliberated, 24/7 wasn't mentioned. We talked about what you guys wanted to put up in that piece of property, and it was a gas station, and we said, oh, it's good use, we thought. At that time, knowing it still had to go to plan, had to go to ARC, had to be approved as we're going through this process. And then when 24/7 was kind of dropped on us in the last 2-3 months, whenever we really got notification, I was kind of got swindled a bit, I thought. Not your fault, just communication. And by the time it got to me personally, it had already, you guys probably are going to plan commissions and other things. I just hadn't read the minutes yet. So when I finally read it, I was really against the 24/7. And I understand the residents. I'm willing to listen and hear you guys and still change my mind. My mind isn't made up, but I'm just saying, to this point, I think you've made some good points with Pete. I don't like government dictating business. I think safety is better, having someone there monitoring the site, also looking over that intersection. If they see something that's strange or odd, they'll call the police. I have trust in our police that they will monitor that facility. I think that might bring more police up to the north side, with the police station moving down to the more southerly area of the village. So I'm on the fence. So I haven't made my mind up at all, but I just let you know where I was and where I am now.
I am in agreement primarily with Trustee Ladisek. I don't have a real problem with the 24/7. I'm not entirely sure I'm buying the safety issue entirely. If it's a single employee there, I don't know that it's any great safety factor, but certainly it could be. I agree with Trustee O'Shea that the police response time would be, fairly rapid, but if they're 6 blocks away, it may not be fast enough. But I guess the bottom line is, I don't feel comfortable telling you how to run your business in that respect. I think there have been some accommodations made to make it less obtrusive to the community, dimmed lights, that type of thing. So I think I would be in agreement with the 24/7.
I said it earlier, and I'll say it again. I think this is an issue that requires the balancing of the residents' interests in peacefully enjoying their property and True North's interest in operating the business in a profitable way. If the percentage of revenue between midnight and 5 a.m. Is low, then I'd be in favor of restricting the hours of use, because I don't think that would negatively impact your business. But if the percentage of revenue is high during those periods of time, such that the profitability of the enterprise is affected by that, then I would be against limiting it, because what I want to try to avoid is imposing restrictions on you that is going to ultimately result in closing that facility. Where I sit right now is, I don't have any data by which I can make that determination. And if you can provide that, that certainly would be helpful to me personally, and maybe to the rest of the board, if that can be done. Because if you can justify the 24/7 use, then I would be supportive of it. But if you can't show me some numbers that say that that's the case, and you've done some analysis of that already, then I think the interests of the residents predominate over the interests of True North under that particular circumstance, and I'd be against it. I will simply note that this is not This is not a circumstance where we are revisiting the granting of a special use permit. The criteria by which this is judged is based on an application for variances from the zoning code. And so when you come and you ask for variances, I do think it is appropriate for the board to provide some guidance on how you run your business, because you're deviating from the guidelines that have been established for operating businesses in the village. So I don't have as much concern as my fellow trustees do about providing that regulation. I think that's what we do as a village board so that our residents can enjoy their property. In that regard, I'll only note that if we look at the zoning ordinances on the variations, what the criteria would be. One is that the purpose of the variation is not based exclusively upon a desire to make more money out of the property. That's not that is one of the considerations that I have to factor into in deciding whether to grant the variance. So when I get the data that I'm looking for, I can make that determination. Until then, I wouldn't be fair to you and I wouldn't be fair to them to just simply speculate on what the outcome should be.
On the 24/7 question, what I would like to see, I would like to see a Monday through Thursday time limit. My preference would be 5 to 10 p.m. And Friday and Saturdays till midnight, with a carve out for holidays where, New Year's Eve and things like that, so that you could be open till 12 and take advantage of those big days. I don't know what the big gas stations days are, but whatever they were, would work towards you to say, these are 5 or 10 big gas station days that are important. Meaning you'd stay open till 12 regardless of whether it was during that Sunday through Thursday. And for me, we could say we don't want to tell you how to run your business, but at the end of the day, every government agency is telling you how to run your business. And that's just a fact of being in business. I think for me, it's the lights and the noise that really drive the 24/7 part for me. I know 7-Eleven is 24/7, but they don't have a big canopy like that. And for me, the driver of the not 24/7 is a way in my hope to turn that canopy off, so that the neighborhood can enjoy the no lights there. So that's where I would lean now. I also think it's a way to acknowledge it. And you guys talked about a review. I would sort of do review the other way. I'd say let's try that, and then let's have a conversation. Maybe we look at some of the data on revenue. Are you making money? As opposed to doing a review the other way. That's the way that's the way I would do it.
I generally allow the trustees to deliberate, and I don't generally offer too much opinion in this instance. Mark, the data that you're looking for, it would be perceived. There's no crystal ball to understand how the residents of Glen Ellyn will react to a gas station and what the specific need is now based on their studies. I'm sure that they've developed models that you understand where your profitability is. I do feel that a modest restriction should be considered. I don't agree with Trustee Kenwood. I think if it was some gesture to allow a reset period, possibly Sunday through Thursday, closing 12 to 5, and at Friday and Saturday closing 1 to 5, they can man the station. That same safety thing can be offered. These are recommendations as we consider someone moving into our town. I'm comfortable with offering some modest restrictions and saying there's a common ground that as a community we can meet you and be good stewards of our property, our opportunities, what best benefits our residents. I am a bit concerned about I think that we need to listen to the residents. We need to hear what they have to say and talk about this more. But I hesitate bringing this back up based on performance, because the performance can dictate the result. Either in driving sales or opportunities, or even with it opens it up to a situation, I think, that we need to, again, take the time to listen to the residents and make the decision, and the decision needs to, I don't know if we were to make a decision with restricted hours, if Walgreens was to come, Stacy, I have a question for you. If Walgreens was to come back to the village board and ask for consideration to change to 24 hours, can that go through a board process and be changed in the future, or is that something that's irreversible?
So they would have to come through the village. They didn't request 24/7 for that location, but if they, since there is a condition in the ordinance that limits their hours based on what they requested, they would have to go to the Plan Commission for an amendment, and that would have to be approved by the village board.
So even if we were to place a condition on True North for some modest restrictions to try to find some common ground here, 2 boards from now, if they were to come and say that this is an issue, there is a process that they could go through plan, through a community review. And
To modify a
this-
condition, requesting to do that, yes.
So why doesn't Walgreens need to, or why would Walgreens need to come? Not that they're interested, but.
Walgreens was a bad example because did we place a restriction though with the zoning? So
We did.
Then it is a perfect example, that is, but if they said that we need to offer a 24-hour pharmacy because of a state mandate and being available for some example, or because of some regulation change, or just the competitive environment, if they were to come to a board and the board was to go through a process through commission, there is a process to change this decision. So as we fight here to make the right decision, this decision can be overturned or changed by some future board.
Correct.
I just want to clarify, though, I don't think we put the condition on them.
I understand.
Okay,
I'm just
all right.
trying to make an
I
example.
heard you say the condition.
But it was a
We did.
condition that was
Walgreens?
added to the approval.
We did,
Right.
yes.
They
So
put
it
on.
would take.
No, no.
It was there.
No, it was the planning commission that made it.
Yes.
Right, Stacy?
I'm talking about with Walgreens.
Yeah, it's the plan
Yep.
commission
The
that made
plan
it.
commission made the recommendation, and then it was
Yes.
approved as part of the approval.
They
Yes,
didn't
it
ask
was.
for it, but the plan commission asked to put it in there. Even though Walgreens didn't ask to be open, the plan commission asked them to put it in there, and Walgreens
Correct.
agreed.
I understand. I'm just making
Yeah,
a
just
point
letting
that
John know.
as we make a decision, Diane, there's a review process in the future if it became
Absolutely.
necessary for
I
them,
just-
without ordering an automatic review at 6 months to
No, I
make the
appreciate
change.
that. I appreciate that.
So I'm going to open it up to public
Can I just,
comment.
one more clarification? I thought I heard you say that we didn't agree, but it sounded to me like we did agree that restricted hours, you just disagreed with the time of the hours. Is that?
I'm leaning in that direction.
Okay.
I'm not making any
Right,
commitments
okay.
in any direction at this point. I'm saying that there should be a consideration in our deliberations to, but I can't see that to the level that you want to dictate their business. I'm not
Okay.
comfortable with that. I would like some period of the consideration for some modest period of commitment here for closure.
Can I ask a follow-up question to the
I
petitioner?
understand.
Can I ask a follow-up question to the petitioner? Mr. Howard, from listening to the board and knowing where residents stand, trying to get a little bit more, I like to be creative sometimes in my processes, so you can tell me flat out, no way. But would an option be to restrict gas-only sales, 12 to 5, and leave your convenience store open 24/7?
Well, so for a lot
Is
of the
it-
reasons that we're asking for 24 hours, that doesn't really alleviate those. I guess the commitment that I would make, that I go back to, if we were able to see in whole what our operations could look like, I think we'd be in a better determination on what possible concessions could be made that we could live with. So specifically asked on the 24 hours, as President Demos asked earlier today, it's not just that single thing.
Right.
It's a lot of the concessions we've made along the way, and I'm not sure that we're not complete yet this evening either. So, if we can take that back and look comprehensively of what this project would look like, we'd be in a better situation to make a very informed decision on what, if any, additional concessions that we could make.
Okay. And I only brought it up because then it would put you in the direct same competition with the local business that's nearest to you. And then still alleviate the lights until the trees can grow high enough that the lights will not be seen.
So, and probably my biggest concern there would be, I think people generally would recognize that when those canopy lights are on, that we're open. And when those canopy lights go off, they may think that we're, as demonstrated earlier, that we're inside cleaning or something else, and it's not somewhere that that's open for business, or that for that matter is safe to come in, because typically there's much greater lighting, even when reduced, there's greater lighting, and it may not be safe with those lights completely off.
Okay. Those are good points. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask one more?
Yeah, I want to give the public an opportunity to speak. You can ask one more question. And
It's getting late for the public.
It's getting late for the public, and we need.
What do you think is more significant for your profitability, in and out egress out of Main Street in St. Charles, or 24/7 operation?
In and out egress on St. Charles?
And Main.
And Main.
Both.
Access is more important to us than 24 hours.
Okay, thank you.
We're going to, everybody, we're going to start public comment. I do want to remind everybody, because of the amount of people here that need to be heard, we want to be respectful to the people. I'd like to try to limit applause because it takes additional time. There's people that want to be heard. I understand that this is very emotional. I don't want to have to ask you at the point of 3 minutes to stop. I'd like everyone to step up as a neighbor and a resident, or someone that has some advocacy for Glen Ellen, to please follow the rules. If you ceded your time to somebody, you will not be given the opportunity to speak. I had that situation and brief disagreement in a previous meeting. Catherine, and people in the other room, make sure that you listen for your name to be called. Catherine generally, Clerk Galvin generally calls the person who's on deck to speak. You have someone that has time seated here, obviously?
We have several people who have time
Okay.
seated. So I'll set the
Wonderful.
clock accordingly. And are we ready?
We're ready.
Okay, so Diana Martinez will be speaking first. Brett Wallen, you are on deck. Diana, you have had Janie Souther, Karen Grandner, if I mispronounce your names, I apologize, Roland Raffle, and Dan Porter give their time to her.
And real briefly, before Diana starts, I've been asked, we will take a quick comfort break at 10 o'clock, so everybody that needs to count on that can count on that. So we will, however, it winds up either slightly before 10 or slightly after 10. So, Diana, Catherine, you can start the timer. Diana?
I'd like to just comment on the question that Trustee O'Shea had. This is the area on Main that will drain out to Main. It's right next to this last pump. And as we know, we get gas stations spill off at the pump. And I'd like to thank President Demos for coming out and looking yesterday. This is where the water drains from Main. Right there is a place where it's cut out. He saw it, we walked it, and that's why he asked those questions. Because if you look at this plan, again, where it comes back in, because all the drives converge and rain does not roll uphill no matter what anybody tells you. Right here is where it comes, right here is Jason Fuller's yard. He has 2 little children. There's swing sets back there. It's a real thing. It's not fake news. We know gas spills at pumps. I don't care how many suctions and valves and things you have. We know that it falls, right? So how are we going to deal with this in reality? I've lived in this town my whole life, and I've always been an advocate and a supporter. I literally grew up in downtown. My mom was a single mom, and she rented the beauty salon next door to be my nursery. So I learned to walk on Crescent Boulevard. I love this town. That's why I bought my house in this town. Even though it was small, I wanted it to be in Glen Ellen. I could have bought a bigger house in St. Charles. I could have bought a bigger place downtown when I worked at Second City, but I chose here because I love it here. But I got to tell you, this process does not feel like home, and it does not feel like Glen Ellen. You know, we were invited to this gas station party really late in the game, like a year late. So it's really not our fault that we're so frustrated. And we came to the first meetings, and there's nobody here for Joe Able to ask questions to. So it's not that we just let the train roll by and ignored. We were here. And then, conveniently, everybody shows up when the special use gets passed. We see all the people we've never seen before. The whole cast of characters shows up. But we can't ask questions anymore. It just feels so aggressive and so wrong. You know, when it was unanimously approved, from there on, the whole process went downhill. When there was a lawyer present, and you guys lawyered up against the residents of the town, so we couldn't ask a question. 6 times I asked to see, what does the back of it look like? What does this retention pond look like? Remember the first meeting when you said, what houses? What houses are you talking about? There are houses. We've lived here 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. We've lived here a long time. The requirement for trees, let's talk about that. Let's talk about this requirement of trees, because the code requires 42 trees if you read in really small letters, right? 42. So I looked at this. The yellow ones unmarked are the ones that are staying. The pink ones, these ornamental trees that are coming in, I looked them up because I'm like, well, maybe they're big trees, maybe they'll help. Guess what, everybody? We got 5 shrubs coming our way. Isn't this awesome? 5 ornamental shrubs. It's not a game to us. You know, this is like the length of the width of a football field. And we got 5 shrubs coming in. And if I hear one more time about, well, all those trees in the back, they're staying. Come on, we're not dumb. We can see that this is a concrete pad. There's gonna be no trees on the concrete pad, right? None. It's a gas station. And we know that this is all cut out for drainage. So basically, there's no trees here, and there's no trees here, and there's no trees here, because this is where your convenience store is. Which it should be. You're building a gas station and a convenience store. It's not your fault. But don't sell us a party of goods that, oh, it's gonna be, you know, this wonderful wildlife of forestry back here. It's not! Come on! I walk it, I live there, it's the bottom of the ravine. That's what we have. We have 5 or 6 trees and 5 new shrubs. That's the reality. Let's quit blowing smoke. Why is the planning department bending over backwards for this project? Who is representing the tax-paying residents? This project is grossly over-designed for a residential area. And just because it was conveniently rezoned commercial doesn't negate the fact that it's jammed into a residential area. The economics of this project don't make any sense to me as a good business decision. You know, you're so worried about the 7-Eleven, Diane, but come on. The 7-Eleven's going away. Everybody knows it. They've said it. We all know it. They're going away. They're closing. They cannot compete with a 4,200 foot convenience store. So how great are you guys toward business? Till the bigger, better deal comes along? You're putting him out of business. Have you calculated that into your economics? That the money we lose from 7-Eleven, they're not bringing in new money, they're taking money. What about the legalities of these projects? Have those been waived as well? Because, you know, the special use, when Joe brought up, hey, they're supposed to be over here, they're supposed to be 15 foot so we can have a bigger berm. A week later, he gets a piece of paper from Stacy that says, oh, we waived that. So did we waive legalities too? We know that this contract is void. We know that it's lost, it's gone, it's expired. Several meetings ago it's expired and no money has exchanged hands. 2D of the application for a special use states, you have to have a title to the property. You have to be the owner. So did we waive that too? And we've been told a handshake deal has extended the contract? Who in this village has the authority to extend a handshake deal, to extend a contract, and the authority to sell taxpayer assets? It's ridiculous to think any lawyer can extend a handshake with public assets. How much has this property appreciated in the last year since the economy has improved? Shouldn't we have it reappraised? Aren't you guys required to get the best deal on this property for us? You know, the agreement can't be changed, can it, without a public hearing or a public meeting? And when we question things like, how did this happen? Well, we have a home rule, and in the home rule, we can do it. Well, the home rule also says you have to have an economic plan. And we were told, well, the economic plan is in the RFP. Well, if you read the RFP, it's an RFP. It's not an economic plan. And if that's what you guys are telling us, that this is an economic plan, then maybe that explains why we have so many problems with economic development in Glen Ellen. Because this is an RFP. It's a request for proposal. It talks about what the building should look like and what you're looking for. There's no financial basis in there. So you're not following your own rules to have an economic development plan in order to extend this contract. Could this contract, if you really look at it as other lawyers in the community have looked at, they've said you have no urgency. You could hang on to that property for as long as you want. And I know you're in the real estate business. You're in the trucking business, you're in the real estate business, you're in the gas business. This entire process started as a disaster, and everyone who attended the first 2 hearings knows it. And if you want to be held unaccountable and get whatever you want passed, study this, watch the tape, roll it. Just show up with nobody. Don't have any questions answered until the day the use gets approved. And then, that day you bring everybody in. And then from then on, the village will pay for you to be protected from an attorney so the residents don't question you. It's mind-boggling that we are the ones that have to present data and more proof and more data. Why is the responsibility on us? You have access to traffic studies. You have access to the government. Why are we required? I mean, we have stacks of data. You know, this whole corporate responsibility and why I'm a little freaked out about this gas leakage is because all the pumps and safety valves and all that, it works if you follow the rules. But we know you guys have 36 violations in Illinois alone from this year, right? So if you're not following and cleaning these tanks and the prevention caps are jammed, right? And you have cracked hoses and leaking pumps, and I got all 36 of them, but I don't have time to show you. It doesn't work. And that gas is going to leak off into that little girl's backyard where her little swing set is. And they're not here because she's in the hospital. But I'm telling you, this corporate responsibility and Cry Me a River on all the sacrifices. Do you want to hear about sacrifices? My next door neighbor, Pete Gillespie, his wife has a lot of issues. He's gotten very, very ill. So now they both have to be in a home because she can't live alone. And they're trying to sell their house. And it started right before this process started. And I sent you guys the numbers, and I don't want to embarrass them here or share their private numbers here. But when they started this process, that house was $25,000 more. The minute this came into play, they dropped it. Now that they're ready to sign on the line, they dropped it again because of the gas station. And I'm so glad, Pete Letisick, that you care about this gas station being fair to them. But what about us? And I'm so mind-boggled that somebody could go talk to the school and say, don't worry about it because the school is 500 feet just outside the safety zone. They're going to be okay because the wind's going to blow. What about us poor losers who are 100 feet from the pump? Does anybody care about us? Does anybody care about those 2 little girls? It's real. It's real. And they don't have a good track record on keeping their stuff together. I've done so much research, I was invited to join the National Association of Gas Station and Convenience Store Owners. And if you want to know what the biggest safety thing is, if you really, really care, you'll require them to have 2 people there working at night if you keep it open all night. That's what really matters. 2 people make a difference. Look at Florida. They've changed their laws because of the gas station convenience store crime. Look at Naperville. They will not give any more liquor licenses out to convenience stores because they know it promotes drinking and driving. I'm begging you to do the right thing. I'm losing confidence. I thank you guys for doing what you do. I know it's not easy. I know we have driven you crazy, but it's because we care. Thank you.
Okay, Brett Wallen is up next. Debbie Briggs, Ryan Briggs, Carrie Jewell, and Kathleen Fitzpatrick have ceded some of their time to him. And Mark Southard, you are on deck.
So I only need 6 minutes. So I don't need all that time.
Okay.
So
I'll
we
set it
can, we can
anyway.
give some of it back.
Okay.
We don't need to be here any later than we should. But I do just want to start by recognizing that this has certainly been a contentious and difficult issue for many of us. But just because this has been a contentious issue doesn't mean that it should be a divisive one. I think that we all would do well to remember that we're all part of one community, the same community. And I believe that this issue has the potential to still unite us and strengthen our community and not to divide us. Whether you've been a voice in opposition of this gas station or whether you've been a representative of the board and supported it up to this point, I believe our collective motivation has been right, and it's been virtuous, and it's been the same. We all care very deeply about our community. But having the right motivation simply isn't enough. We have to have the right priorities. If we're going to talk about the appropriate solution to this issue, we have to talk about priorities. The priorities of the people and the priorities of our government. And the underlying problem that there's a difference between the two. That there's a difference in the priorities of our government compared to the priorities of the people. Making good decisions is a function of recognizing those priorities. And it's also a function of the recognition of opposing arguments. And in that recognition should be the ideal that neither side of the argument is 100% correct. In order to arrive at the best possible decision, we have to recognize and prioritize the common elements among the potential solutions. In this case, we have two options. Either we can allow True North to build this gas station, or we can leave the property as it is for the time being. Both of those potential solutions have the common elements of health and safety and financial benefit. Now, I think the health and safety concern can be most easily understood if we isolate it to the residential property that is directly adjacent to the gas station. People live there. There is scientific research that shows people that live within 300 feet of a gas station have an increased risk of cancer. And that risk is higher the closer people live to it. That research was published in the Journal of Environmental Management in December 2010. And I have to say, I find the comments about environmental impact tonight wholly inadequate and devoid of facts. And it should be the responsibility of the developer to prove otherwise. So we can compare that health and safety risk to the financial benefit. And we've all heard the $140,000 sales tax estimate. And let's just suppose that that's attainable. That works out to $12 a house in Glen Ellen. So now I ask, each and every one of you here tonight, and those watching this proceeding elsewhere, does $12 outweigh an increased risk of cancer to members of our community? If our board votes to advance this gas station project, then in effect they are saying yes, that $12 is a higher priority than the health and safety concerns of our community. They would be saying that their grasp on our best interests is better than our own. They would be saying that the people cannot be trusted to collectively understand their best interests. And when we do that, we start to erode one of the foundational principles that defines our society as democratic, that the people have the ability and can be trusted to collectively determine their best interests. So this is the choice that you all have as our trusted representatives: to either understand and agree with the collective best interests of our community and to support democracy, or you can vote to advance this gas station project. And I sincerely hope that you understand the consequence of making the wrong choice. Thank you.
Mark Southard is up, followed by Mary Beth Nelms.
I'm Mark Southard. I live at 550 St. Charles Road. I have written out a carefully timed presentation, but due to some of the earlier comments, I'm going to depart from it to some extent. But I want to first talk about zoning. As we know, we heard earlier, the entire corner is Zone C2. And here it is in its entirety. You've already heard it once, but it's worth listening again. The C2 district is intended to provide basic services and convenience shopping for adjacent neighborhoods as well as the entire community. The adjacent neighborhood is on record as opposing the project, as we very eloquently just heard. As for the entire community, no one in Glen Ellen is further from a gas station than 2 miles, and would have no difficulty coming up with filling their tank, whether this is built or not. We can contrast. We just heard the C2 zoning. The C3 reads like this. The C3 district is designed to allow for a wide range of retail and service uses and accommodate those motorist-oriented commercial activities which may be incompatible with uses encouraged in other business districts. There's only one other business district. There's a placeholder C1, but it's not used. The other one is neighborhood-oriented, not automotive-oriented. So for the priority here should go to the people who are in the neighborhood, because it's supposed to be restricted to neighborhood type businesses. The other ones there are the 7-Eleven, Papa Severios, the Five Corner Cleaners, the Glen Ellen Chamber of Commerce is across the street, the Glen Ellen Historical Society also, Village Garage is across the other way, the Kumon Learning Center, the Main Cleaners. These are all community-based services. They're all appropriate to C2. It was a stretch when Walgreens went in, but this just blows C2 out of the water. I mean, what reasonable person could read these 2 descriptions, these 2 zoning types, and say that this is a C2 project? It defies belief. I don't know what time I've got, almost none. The money doesn't work. I mean, we know the money does. 140,000, that's 14 million in annual sales. The average for the industry is around 3.7 to slightly over 5 million annually. 80%, 20% are food sales, which are not subject to sales tax. The other side of it is the loss of income that's going to come as property values are diminished. You lose $8 every dollar you lose there. You need to do $8 in sale to make it up. You're not going to do that.
Thank you.
Mary Beth Nelms is up, followed by Pete Kynan. Kindlin?
Hello, thank you for letting me speak. I'm not going to apologize, but I started my day off with this as my basic premise. So I will start what I was going to try to achieve, but I've changed my plan drastically after listening to all the conversations this evening. The village board is elected to make certain decisions to maintain and enhance the health, safety, and well-being of the citizens of the village of Glen Ellen. That's on your website. That's what your job description is. And I like to think that you would take pride in honoring that to represent us being elected officials. This whole project has seemed to be just blown way out of proportion. In my opinion, I heard something earlier this evening. Somebody quoted that we are all good people with good intentions. I caught that from this meeting this evening. So with that being said, good people with good intentions, there is no contract with the people from True North. As I'm understanding right now, handshakes are not a signature on a dotted line. The cleaning between 12 and 5 of a gas station of this proportion, I don't think anybody wants to hear vacuums if they don't want to hear air compressors. A good friend and neighbor had made a comment on our personal email conversations. And I think both Ryan and Stacy, they did a great job in their presentations. And I'm being honest, both did a fantastic job. But I can only equate that to people talking about where to place the lawn chairs on the Titanic before it sank. The issue is not the concessions that you've made to make this project work. The issue is the iceberg, what is beyond the decisions that are going to be made by our elected officials. Tonight, maybe not. I don't think it should be voted on tonight. As far as I've listened to, your negotiations don't seem to be finished. You're wanting to look into ordinances and stormwater, drainage, fencing. Mr. Senek wants more data, which he should get more data from people, professionals who know what they're talking about. These concessions keep being brought up, and I think that this village, this board, would be derelict if they continued and voted on anything now until we get all the specifics taken care of. Diana had 6 minutes left. I'll close.
If you see the time,
I'll close.
If you see the time, I'm going to be firm on the time limit,
This-
so thank you.
The study was done in January 26. It was 36 degrees out. There was no children walking that day. And 2 boards ago, nobody wanted a gas station 2 boards ago. Thank you for listening, and I appreciate it, and I would really hope that you would vote against this project.
Okay, Pete Kindlin is up, followed by Leland Livingston.
Good evening, trustees. I know we've been sitting for a while, so I will be brief. Tonight we opened up our meeting with a prayer, talking about keeping our village safe and beautiful. And even with the 38 iterations to the plan, I still don't find the plan beautiful, but that's not the intent of my, my talk here this evening. My biggest concern is with the safety of this plan. I live at 757 North Main Street, so less than 300 feet from the planned gas station. We walk our children to Forest Glen School in the morning. And one of the biggest concerns is the traffic. And I think we definitely were aware tonight that the traffic studies are grossly incomplete. and we don't know what the impacts will be to walking our children to school. As a basic concern, as a resident of Glen Ellen, I want to know that I can safely walk my kids to school. And I don't think any of you trustees can tell me tonight that with this plan, we'll be able to safely walk our kids to school. In addition to that, the concerns with cancer and the benzene and having an oil tanker barreling through Main Street down through the tracks 5 times a week is also a little unsettling. Lastly, the main concern I have too is with the additional crime that this would include within our area. You have stated that if you guys don't have a 24/7 operation, that you would be concerned that there might be additional crime to the facility. Is that correct? But you mentioned that tonight, that you thought there could be, and that was one of the reasons why you guys wanted a 24/7 facility. Trustees, I believe you guys agreed upon that, and that's one of the reasons why you think maybe a 24/7 operation would be good for this facility. Well, as a resident that lives just a block away, I'm concerned with the safety and additional crime that might be imposed in my neighborhood between the hours of 12 and 5 a.m. when I'm most susceptible and my family's most susceptible to additional crime. And so trustees, again, I hope that you guys hear that everything that everybody is saying and the major concerns in terms of the safe and beauty of Glen Ellen, because so far I don't see that that fits within the vision and the safety and beautiful of this great town. Thank you.
Leland Livingston is next. Cecilia Smith deferred her time. Christy Bockelman is next.
Hi, my name's Leland Livingston, and I live at 789 Forest Avenue. Okay. Over the past 2 months, a course of opposition to the gas station has emerged. While listening to these neighbors and townfolk, I have heard a constant refrain. Why isn't the village board looking out for our interests, the community's interests, the concerns? Why is the village board making concession after concession to True North and not willing to give our concessions serious consideration? The citizens' requests, no 24/7, a reduction in the number of pumps, and no liquor license. But almost as an answer to the community's opposition choir, I have read and heard village officials and board members say that I represent the village of Glen Ellen. I must do what's best for the village of Glen Ellen, right? Okay, yeah? All right. I have to say that as an American history and government teacher for over 30 years, the village officials' view of where their responsibilities lie is simply wrong. That is because their understanding of to whom they are responsible totally misses a fundamental principle of democracy: we, the people. Listen to this as it is written on the Glen Ellen Village Board website. The village trustees, along with the village president, make certain decisions to maintain and enhance the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of the village of Glen Ellen. Right? There's something about responsiveness to citizens' concerns, but we won't worry, okay? Now, do you hear the dissonance between maintaining and enhancing the health, safety, and welfare of Glen Ellen and maintaining and enhancing the health and welfare and safety of the citizens of Glen Ellen? And this is not just a matter of semantics. Those words give a clear insight into the thinking of these officials. We, the lot of us, are citizens of Glen Ellen, plus over the 900 signatures on the petition to stop this gas station. And we do not feel that you are fulfilling your responsibility to us. This gas station in no way enhances our health, safety, or welfare. unless you count welfare as taxes going into the village coffers. And when all is said and done, according to Peter Clifford's research, that revenue is going to be less than if the gas station didn't exist. But back to my main point. There's a stark difference between seeing yourself as a representative of the people and advocating for their best interests, and seeing yourself as a representative of a political entity. However, there is a political philosophy out there where the interest of the political body is placed above the interest of the individual. But I really don't think we want to go there. James Wilson, one of the only 6 men to sign the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, wrote during the Constitutional Convention, "Can we forget for whom we are forming a government? Is it for men or for some imaginary being called states?" I'd like to paraphrase his words. Can we forget for whom the village board was created? Is it for the men and women of the village or for some imaginary being called Glen Ellen? I hope you come to see your duly elected responsibilities are to the people. I want to leave you just with 2 thoughts to ponder. Please think long and hard about your responsibilities to the citizens. If you do, I find it absolutely impossible that you could support this gas station when an overwhelming majority of the citizens who are engaging in this political process are opposed to it. Now, hear that again. An overwhelming majority of the citizens engaging in this process oppose it. The second point is that, guys, it's okay to say you made a mistake and that you did not realize the outpouring of the opposition to this gas station by the citizens of this community. It takes a bigger person, a person of character, to stop, realize their mistakes, and try to rectify the situation. I hope the village trustees are people of character and will do the right thing. Thank you.
Christy Bockelman is up, and I believe we'll take a short break, and when we come back, Tom Tusher will be up next.
Okay, my name's Christy Bockelman. I live at 765 Prairie Avenue. I have been in touch with you, the trustees, to explain very clearly why I'm entirely against this project and why you should be too. You have failed us as representatives. I was not just surprised, but I was shocked when I decided to look up the definition of just what exactly your jobs are. We just heard it. On your very own village website, it states that the village board is elected to make certain decisions to maintain and enhance the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of the village of Glen Ellen. You've claimed that residents want this gas station, but I have yet to hear a resident come forward in favor of this. They've not come forward in person, in private. They've not come on social media, nor made a statement in a printed news article. They don't exist. Those of us in opposition have shown up. We've spoken up. We've made our cause known. We in opposition have served you with a petition of signatures, and an entire grade school parent-teacher association has taken an official stand against this project. You've shown us no proof of need nor want of this gas station in our community. Tell me how this enormous eyesore, which is so out of proportion in both size and imposition, will help to maintain or enhance the health, safety, and welfare of us, the citizens of the village of Glen Ellen. Let's review some definitions. Health, as a noun, means the state of being free from illness or injury. Safety, as a noun, means the condition of being protected from or unlikely to cause danger, risk, or injury. To keep us from harm. Well-being as a noun or welfare as a noun means the health, happiness, and fortunes of a persons or group. Now, if it is not affordable to build this gas station with the proper provisions to protect our collective health, safety, and well-being, then it's not worth building at all. Why would you let a company into our town who is not going to look out for our best interest? Why would you vote to sign a contract and pass variances that the Planning Commission unanimously advised you not to? You are doing irreparable harm to our community if you do not take our opposition seriously. We should all be focused on the preservation and beautification of this sweet little town. In closing, I beg of you to take a serious look at what you're voting for or against this evening, and ultimately remember that if it is not affordable to build this gas station with the proper provisions to protect our collective health, safety, and well-being, then it's not worth building at all. Thank you.